upon a hidden archive, a secret vault where the legendary demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren kept their most terrifying artifacts, cursed objects, things that shouldn't exist in our world. And I think I may have unleashed something truly evil. Beware. Once you see these things, you'll never sleep soundly again. The Crying Boy paintings. The Crying Boy paintings, mass-produced prints of tearful children, cast a long, chilling shadow. Whispers of a sinister curse followed them, a chilling legend that whispered of misfortune befalling those who dared to display them. Stories circulated of homes engulfed in flames, leaving the paintings eerily untouched amidst the charred ruins. Pets would vanish, accidents would occur, and a sense of unease would settle over the households, a constant gnawing dread that something malevolent was watching, waiting. The Warrens felt an unsettling energy surrounding these paintings. They spoke to families who swore by the curse, their voices trembling as they recounted the inexplicable tragedies that had befallen them since acquiring the paintings. Was it a genuine curse? A malevolent entity trapped within the artwork? Or simply a chilling coincidence? The answer, shrouded in mystery, continues to haunt those who dare to delve into the chilling legend of the Crying Boy paintings. From the cursed painting to the famous doll, Annabelle. The name Annabelle evokes a sense of innocent childhood, but the reality of this particular doll is far from endearing. This seemingly harmless Raggedy Ann doll, a gift to a young nursing student, quickly became a source of terror. Unexplained movements, chilling whispers, and a palpable sense of spiteful presence plagued the student and her roommate. The doll, it seemed, was not simply an inanimate object, but a vessel for a malevolent entity, an evil-minded spirit that sought to torment and harm those who crossed its path. Ed and Lorraine Warren, summoned to investigate, discovered a chilling truth. Annabelle was not merely haunted. She was possessed, a gateway to an evil-intentioned force that sought to exploit the fear and vulnerability of those around her. The Warrens, utilizing their expertise in the occult, were able to contain the entity, but the experience left an indelible mark on their psyche, a stark reminder of the terrifying power that can reside within seemingly innocuous objects. The haunted tapes were not mere recordings of sound. They were vessels for malevolent entities, each one a chilling testament to the dangers that lurked beyond the veil of our reality. Ed and Lorraine Warren, renowned paranormal investigators, encountered these audio artifacts during their investigations, their seemingly innocuous exteriors masking a sinister secret. When played, the tapes would unleash a cacophony of unsettling sounds, chilling whispers, guttural moans, and the spectral echoes of tormented souls. A palpable sense of dread would grip those who listened, their very bones chilled by the malevolent energy emanating from the recordings. Those unfortunate enough to hear these haunting sounds often suffered from disturbing nightmares, inexplicable illnesses, and a lingering sense of dread that clung to them like a shroud, a constant reminder of the dark forces unleashed by the tapes. The cursed debuk box is up next on this list. A seemingly ordinary wooden box held a sinister secret within its confines. Ed and Lorraine Warren were drawn into this mystery when a man named Kevin Manus claimed to have experienced a series of terrifying events after acquiring the box. Unexplained illnesses, chilling nightmares, and an unsettling sense of dread began to plague Manus and his family. Objects moved inexplicably, and a chilling presence seemed to permeate their home. The Warrens, sensing an evil force, delved into the box's history, uncovering a chilling tale of its origins and the wicked spirit, a debuk, trapped within. Ed and Lorraine sensed the malicious presence clinging to the box, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can sometimes reside within seemingly innocuous objects. They conducted rituals to cleanse the box and banish the nefarious entity, but the experience left an indelible mark on the Warrens, a stark reminder of the terrifying power that can be unleashed when the veil between our world and the spirit realm is breached. The cursed Misha doll, a porcelain creation with an unsettlingly lifelike gaze, possessed a history that chilled the very soul. Whispers followed it, tales of a young child who had tragically met their demise in the home where the doll resided. Some claim the child's spirit had become intertwined with the doll, seeking solace or perhaps vengeance. The doll itself seemed to emanate a chilling aura, its vacant eyes seeming to follow every movement, a constant, unsettling presence in any room it occupied. Those who encountered Misha often reported unsettling experiences. Unexplained cold spots would appear in the doll's vicinity, and a sense of dread would settle over the room. Some even claimed to hear whispers, chillingly reminiscent of a child's frightened cries, emanating from the doll's direction. Ed and Lorraine Warren, renowned paranormal investigators, were drawn to the unsettling energy surrounding Misha. They delved into the doll's history, uncovering a chilling tale of tragedy and perhaps a lingering spirit seeking solace or retribution. The Warrens, with their years of experience investigating the paranormal, sensed a malicious presence clinging to the doll, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can sometimes reside within seemingly innocent objects. The haunted mirror, a seemingly ordinary piece of glass, held a chilling secret within its reflective surface. Ed and Lorraine Warren noticed disturbing visions and an evil demonic presence emanating from it. Those who dared to gaze into the mirror's depths claimed to witness terrifying apparitions, their reflections contorted into grotesque caricatures, and whispers of unseen entities echoing from its depths. A sense of dread would settle over the room, a chilling premonition of impending doom. Some who looked into the mirror claimed to see visions of their own demise, gruesome and terrifying glimpses into their own mortality. The Warrens, utilizing their years of experience investigating the paranormal, sensed an ominous presence clinging to the mirror, a chilling reminder that the darkness can sometimes reside within the most unexpected of places. They conducted rituals to cleanse the mirror and banish the very evil entity, but the experience left an indelible mark on the Warrens, a stark reminder of the terrifying power that can be unleashed when the veil between our world and the spirit realm is breached. The fate of the mirror, however, remains shrouded in mystery. The Warrens, fearing its potential to cause further harm, likely concealed its location, ensuring its evil curse power remained dormant. But the possibility that it still exists somewhere, waiting to claim its next victim, remains a chilling thought. Ed and Lorraine Warren sensed an ominous presence emanating from a hand. Well, it wasn't just an ordinary hand, it was the Perrin family witch's hand. The Perrin family witch's hand was a chilling artifact, a severed hand allegedly belonging to Bathsheba Sheba Sherman, the possessed evil witch who tormented the Perrin family in their Rhode Island farmhouse. The hand, a grotesque and disturbing object, was said to be imbued with the witch's dark energy, a conduit for her malevolent power. Those who dared to come near it reported feeling a sudden chill, an inexplicable dread creeping over them. Whispers of misfortune and ill luck followed those who encountered the hand, chilling tales of accidents, illnesses, and a pervasive sense of unease. The haunted organ. The haunted organ was a magnificent instrument of ebony and ivory, held a chilling secret within its intricate pipes. This musical masterpiece, once a source of joy and entertainment, had become a vessel for an evil presence. In the dead of night, the organ would erupt in a cacophony of eerie melodies, its keys seemingly dancing on their own, driven by an unseen force. The music, a chilling blend of mournful dirges and jarring dissonances, would send shivers down the spines of those who heard it, filling the air with a palpable sense of dread. Those who encountered the haunted organ often reported unsettling experiences. Unexplained cold spots would appear in its vicinity, and a sense of dread would settle over the room. Some even claimed to hear whispers, chillingly reminiscent of a child's frightened cries, emanating from the instrument's depths. The haunted crucifix is a case deeply rooted in the lore of Ed and Lorraine Warren, though its specific details remain shrouded in a degree of mystery. The Warrens encountered a crucifix that had become a vessel for a malevolent entity. This sacred object, once a symbol of faith and protection, had been corrupted, its holy essence twisted by a dark force. Those who came into contact with the crucifix reported unsettling experiences, unexplained illnesses, nightmares, and a pervasive sense of dread plagued those who were in its presence. The crucifix seemed to radiate a malevolent energy, creating an atmosphere of fear and unease. Ed and Lorraine Warren, utilizing their expertise in the occult, conducted rituals to cleanse the crucifix and banish the evil entity, ultimately restoring its sacred purpose. However, the experience served as a chilling reminder to the Warrens of the terrifying power that can be unleashed when the veil between our world and the spirit realm is breached.
We might as well kick things off with the haunted eBay painting, or the Hands Resistum, based on a real-life photograph of the artist from his youth. This painting, which is a dance of a boy, a doll, and disembodied hands, that can trace its origins to an abandoned brewery. Well, that's where this California couple stumbled upon its eerie presence. Soon after introducing the painting into the sanctum of their home, the couple began to deal with a lot of ickiness. We're talking, they were like, maybe we should sell this on eBay. We don't like it. It's not vibing well with our place. So, in the virtual marketplace, they presented their artifact to the world, but they did add a little note. Like, hey, by the way, this painting may or may not possess supernatural powers that could impact or change your life. Well, some folks see that and they're like, okay, bet. And yeah, so there was one couple, they were like, alright, we like this. They brought it home, and it didn't go so well with their daughter. Sorry, allow me to backtrack. The original advertisement did carry a tone of like, maybe the boy in the painting steps outside. Which, yeah, that's kind of the reason why the original couple was like, get this out of here. So the curious drama surrounding this haunted masterpiece reached its crescendo when it found a new custodian in Kim Smith, a gallery owner hailing from Michigan. The gavel of the digital auction, by the way, pronounced a sum of $1,025. Yeah, well, the enigma persisted. In a revelation that deepened the mystique, Kim Smith disclosed that her inbox bore witness to a procession of emails. A lot of testimonials from individuals claiming that, hey, we came to your art exhibit. We saw this painting. Things didn't go well. I'm talking reports of repulsion, physical illness, all because of the haunted eBay painting. Apparently, this ordinary painting was just some sort of conduit for spectral awfulness. Now, if you feel ill after we were talking about this painting, let us know in the comments. We'd love to know. Ever hear about the crying boy paintings? Well, we're speaking of paintings. So when Bob Smith was a youngin' in the 70s, he was fascinated by this painting in his grandmother's house. It was this cheap print of a well-known piece, and it was just hanging up in the living room wall, as one does. This photo depicted a boy who was kind of similar in age to Bob, and for some reason, he was sad. There was a lot of tears there. Why? No. Turns out, a couple of years after the painting went up on the wall, there was a really bad kitchen fire in the house. And even though the kitchen was destroyed, the rest of the house, undamaged. This painting was eventually sold in a garage sale, and who got it? A couple of folks. For a couple of years, it did puzzle Bob why his grandmother was like, I'm getting rid of this painting, until he read a series of articles about a cursed painting. Yep, the crying boy. So this is one of a series of paintings completed by artist Giovanni Abramelin that was completed in the 1950s. And it's a lot of sad humans. So while it might be kind of strange to want an image of a weeping being on your wall, these pictures were popular all over the world. Like in the UK alone, there was over 50,000 copies sold. The folks represented were often very poor, but also very beautiful. In total, Giovanni painted over 60 paintings. And up until the early 80s, prints and reprints of his images were mass produced. In 1985, the most popular tabloid newspaper in the UK printed a story that caused panic, and that's where things get spooky. The Sun published an article entitled Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy, and describing the terrible experience of May and Ron Hall after their home was destroyed by fire. And the cause of their fire, much like Bob's grandmother, was a greasy pan that overheated and went kaboom. So you've got this fire spreading rapidly and destroying everything. But there was one thing that remained intact. Copy of the painting. Well, the couple was like, okay, this painting is cursed, we're getting rid of this. And hey, this probably would have just been like a little sub-story in history, except for there's one little thing. A firefighter claimed that he had attended at least 15 house fires where everything was destroyed, except for prints of the crying boy, which were completely intact. Well, that's where things kind of went bonkers. Everybody was like, I've had a painting, I've had a painting, I've had a fire, you've had a fire. So, turns out the Sun also claimed that a woman had lost her house to a fire 6 months after buying the painting. There were another family, fire, painting. I could go on and on, but you get the idea. There was somebody that even tried to burn her painting for safety, and then she just had a lot of bad luck. We're talking like, and it wasn't just residential homes either, there was businesses. There was a pizza parlor that had everything destroyed except for the painting. So when the Sun reported that even rational firefighters refused to have a copy of this painting in their homes, that's when things were like, okay, we've got a problem. Whew. It got to the point where even if there was like an image of a crying youngin' by any artist in a house that went on fire, yeah, these paintings were blamed. Thankfully, the Sun was like, okay, you know what, things are going crazy, we've got an idea. They offered the frightened public a solution. On Halloween night of 1985, hundreds of these paintings were collected together by the newspaper and burnt under the supervision of the fire brigade. So, if we want to backtrack, why were all these paintings cursed? Well, theories ranged from the person depicted in the picture being cursed because icky, Apparently, the subject of the painting had died in a fire and his spirit was trapped in the art. And the most enduring story claimed that the boy accidentally set fire to the studio of Giovanni. Simply put, wherever this painting went, fires followed. Not good. Charles Manson was sentenced to death following his conviction in 1971, and even though California was like, death penalty is not good in 1972, he was still in prison for a very long time. So we all know about the cult, right? Well, everybody was like, okay, once he goes in prison, the cult's over. Well, not so good. Not so easy. He had a way of keeping the cult going. He had a demonic influence on his cult, and he sent a lot of letters and a lot of mail from prison, which don't think he would be allowed to in nowadays. So what did he do? Well, he used electrical thought impressions on a TV. Somehow he got a TV. I don't know. Then he mailed it to a grad student so he could manipulate him from afar. This poor guy was tormented by all sorts of hallucinations and hauntings while he owned the TV. Now, eventually he was selling a car. I think it was around 2012, and he was like, I'm just gonna leave the TV in the car, and some other letters from Manson. So the guy who bought the car was like, what on earth did I do? Well, turns out he got cursed. He was out of work for like months, his mom got ill, she passed away, there was a motorcycle accident where one of his buddies died, and like even though he was like, I'm a skeptic, he's like, there's something going on here, like we're 2 and 2 making 4, this is bad. So he's like, what do? He didn't think of burying it, he didn't think of burning it, no, he mailed it to a friend, and his life got better. I don't know how his friend's life got, but I can't imagine it went well. So how far would you go if you missed out on getting a job? Would you like post some 1-star reviews? Maybe you'd set a creepy carving of Satan outside the company building with a curse that foretold the destruction of the place? Too far? Not for a snubbed architect in 1890 Swansea, South Wales, who was denied the chance to rebuild a church because he was like, yeah, I'll curse it instead. The story goes that when famed architect Sir Arthur Blomfield beat a local architect for the contract to rebuild the ancient St. Mary's Church in the center of the town, the local man was ticked. A couple years later, he purchased an old row of cottages that stood opposite the church, tore them down, and built a large red brick building there, placing a statue of a smiling devil outside. Well, then he also placed a curse on the church, proclaiming that it would soon be destroyed and the devil would look upon the rubble and keep smiling. Well, what do you know? During a whole big bad situation in history, St. Mary's took a direct hit, allowing the curse to come true. Now the devil is a quirky landmark, but I wouldn't go too close. And for today's final artifact, in the case of this haunted jewelry shop ledger, it seems all the spooky accountancy aide wanted was to be beside the seaside. So, backtracking, folks. After the demolition of the Shoreland Fuchs Jewelers in the city of Brighton on England's south coast, builder Tony Bennyvoits removed an old shop ledger book he had found hidden behind a brick wall. He took the interesting example of retail memorabilia home, and soon enough his family was being plagued by all sorts of phenomena. We got all the usual stuff, folks. Strange voices, ghostly apparitions, you've even got images appearing in a rug. One particularly uppity spirit informed the family, the daughter, that you gotta get that book back to the first entry before it goes kaput. So, not wanting to anger anybody, the family did donate the book to Brighton's most haunted house, and that's where you can see it today. In 5th place, we have Ed's paintings. So long before they were famed ghost hunters investigating, the Amityville Horror and featured in films such as The Conjuring, Ed and Lorraine had a much different hobby. Painting. Actually, it was how the duo made a living. Ed Warren was a trained fine arts painter. The duo traveled all over the country to sell their paintings, and they also taught art classes. The couple used Ed's paintings as a way to gain entry into houses they wanted to investigate. They would research houses they believed to be haunted, and then drive to the house. After Ed painted the house in question, he would then hand the painting to Lorraine, who would go up, knock on the door, and offer the homeowners the painting, which would usually turn into a conversation about the property and the hauntings. This process was how their investigative career began. Ed became known for his barn door art, painting tranquil winter scenes on stained pine, which was all the rage for adorning the wood grain halls of any home in the late 60s, and apparently these paintings are now quite rare. Many of his paintings that have been photographed feature different haunted houses, and examples of his art and calligraphy style are displayed throughout the museum. In 4th place, we have black magic masks. These fall under the practice of tulpa, which is a concept in theosophy, mysticism, and the paranormal, of a materialized thought form, typically in human form such as an imaginary friend or being that is created through spiritual practice and intense concentration. In simpler English, the masks act as a representation of the practice, which is a form of mysticism that involves creating sentient and autonomous beings separate from oneself. So, an imaginary friend? The concept of tulpas and their creation, including the word tulpa, come from a close-in Tibetan Buddhist practice, with tulpa being a Tibetan word for creature of the mind. Tulpas did not become part of Western paranormal lore until the 1970s, and those who practice have been cited as wearing masks similar to Halloween ones in order to take on the appearance of whatever the mask looks like. I guess that explains why I've seen many cheap-looking Halloween masks in the video walkthroughs from the museum, so I suppose I'll retract my statements that I made about how pathetic they look. If anyone is curious about modern practices and appropriations of tulpamancers, the interweb origins can be traced back to 4chan message boards in 2009, and no, if you don't know what that means, I'm not going to elaborate on just how cursed that sentence was to utter. Oh, it gets worse. Alright. The communities gained popularity when adult fans of My Little Pony started discussing tulpas of characters from the Friendship is Magic television series. The fans attempted to use meditation and lucid dreaming techniques to create imaginary friends. Look, I knew someone back in high school who fell under that subculture, and he was the furthest thing from mentally stable. The guy had people munching fantasies as well. Time to move on before I get nightmares again. In third place, we have a Satanic Idol. So this story began in 1991 when a deer hunter was walking through the woods in Connecticut, close to where Ed and Lorraine resided. The hunter got lost and after some time stumbled upon a raised, circular rock formation with the idol in question standing in the middle of it. It is believed that the formation was common with folks who practiced devil worship in the 70s. The hunter began to feel uncomfortable and left the area, deciding to make his way back to his car, and along the way he noticed an elderly gentleman walking alongside him who was dressed head to toe in black. Now the man in black never spoke a single word to the deer hunter. The hunter was getting more nervous by the second, and also more lost and unsure of his directional path. Desperate, he turned to the mysterious figure and simply asked, "How do I get out of here?" Luckily for our narrator, the man in black pointed in a direction and then disappeared. The hunter was so thrown off by that day that he reached out to Ed, who requested to be brought to the same area. The hunter wasn't 100% sure he could find the exact location, but was willing to try. Together, the men were able to stumble through the forest, and without the aid of the man in black this time, found the rock formation. Ed removed the demonic idol from the area and placed it at home in his museum, and that's when things got a little weirder. Because, you know, a man in black spotting and weird forest stuff isn't weird enough for us. Approximately 3 days after removing the idol, Lorraine collapsed for no known reason, and she was transported to the hospital where no one could identify what was wrong with her. Thankfully, after 3 more days, she recovered. Red flag time! 3s and 6s are very popular numbers amongst the demonic scary people and things that you want to avoid. Ed believed that this was caused by the gentleman in black, who was believed to have been a high priest in a satanic cult, as a form of payback for removing the satanic idol. Now, this idol remains in the Warrens Museum to this day, and honestly, I think it looks like a papier-mâché masterpiece of an alien, but please let me know in the comments if anyone out there has a different opinion. In second place, we have a shadow doll. So among one of the first haunted items visible in the museum to visitors is a shadow doll, which boasts bird feathers and a genuine human tooth. Unlike the other dolls included in the museum, I'd consider this creature more of a sculpture. Ergo, why she made her way to my list today. Also, she's just overall terrifying to look at. I'm calling it now. She better join the TV universe soon. So a shadow doll is a statue or deity of sorts that is made specifically for harm and to be used at the center of curses. I happen to know the steps for the most common curse, and while I'll leave out a step for safety, yes, I promise I'll elaborate. So the caster would first need to take a picture of the doll, write a curse on the back of the photo, and then send it to whomever the curse is aimed for. The person who receives the picture with the curse will sadly invite that curse into their lives. I'm thinking, oh, totally forgot. The doll will also appear in that person's dreams. While not too much is known about the origins of this specific doll, it was initially purchased in a vintage store under the assumption that it was, simply an antique. I have a couple of antique dolls myself, and I'm shuddering to think about what they would do if activated by any kind of curse. They've already got enough of a personality. Thanks. In our first place, we have a copy of Crying Boy. So when Bob Smith was a young child in the 70s, he became fascinated by a painting in his grandmother's house. The painting was a cheap print of a well-known piece and was hung on the living room wall. The photo depicted a boy who was a similar age to Bob, and for some reason, looked sad and downcast, with tears brimming from his troubled eyes. A few years after the painting went up on the wall, there was a devastating kitchen fire in the house. While the kitchen was destroyed, the rest of the house was undamaged. The painting was eventually sold in a garage sale to Ed Warren himself. For years it puzzled Bob why his grandmother got rid of the painting, until he read a series of articles about a cursed painting. Yep, that painting was The Crying Boy. That's the title of the painting. The Crying Boy was one in a series of paintings by artist Giovanni Abramelin that was completed in the 1950s. The series depicted young, teary-eyed younglings. While it may seem strange to want an image of a weeping child on your wall, the pictures proved popular all over the world. For example, in the UK alone, over 50,000 copies were sold. The children represented were often poor and very beautiful. In total, Giovanni painted over 60 paintings, and up until the early 80s, prints and reprints of his images continued to be mass-produced. In 1985, the most popular tabloid newspaper in the United Kingdom printed a story that caused panic and ended the popularity of his work. The Sun published an article entitled "Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy," describing the terrible experience of May and Ron Hall after their home was destroyed by fire. The cause of the fire, much like Bob's grandmother's, was a greasy pan that overheated and burst into flames. The fire spread rapidly and destroyed everything on the ground floor of the home. Only one item remained intact: print of the Crying Boy on their living room wall. Distraught at their loss, the devastated couple made the bizarre claim that the painting was cursed, and it, not the pan, was the cause of the fire. Now, this tale probably would have disappeared into the archives of strange and mysterious stories, except for one, tiny thing. A firefighter claimed that he had attended at least 15 house fires where everything was destroyed except for prints of the Crying Boy, which would remain completely intact. So before long, this gathered momentum, and a rash of fires all over the world were blamed on the cursed child, not to be confused with the play that's currently running of the same name. In subsequent articles, the Sun went on to claim that a woman had lost her house to a fire 6 months after buying the painting. Two sisters had fires in their homes after buying a copy of the painting, when one sister even claimed to have seen her painting sway backwards and forwards on the wall while it was happening. A concerned woman on the Isle of Wight attempted to burn her painting without success, and then went on to suffer a run of very bad luck. A gentleman in Nottingham who possessed a print of the painting lost his home, and his family was injured. A pizza parlor got destroyed, including every painting on their walls, except for the Crying Boy. When the Sun reported that even rational firefighters refused to have a copy of this painting in their homes, the reputation of the Crying Boy was damned forever. In all these cases, and many more that were reported, paintings of the Crying Boy went unharmed. Eventually, there was an image of a crying child by any artist in a house that went on fire. Now, some folks claimed that they experienced bad luck if they attempted to destroy or even get rid of the paintings, while others were convinced that it was only a matter of time before disaster struck them. The Sun eventually offered the frightened public a solution. On Halloween night of 1985, hundreds of the paintings were collected together by the newspaper and burnt under the supervision of the fire brigade. So, why would this seemingly innocent series of paintings be cursed? Theories ranged from the little boy being from a Romani family who placed a curse on the artist, to others claiming that the subject of the painting had died in a fire and his spirit was trapped in the art. The most enduring story claimed that the boy accidentally set fire to the studio of Giovanni Abramelin. Simply put, wherever the little orphan went, fires mysteriously followed, earning him the name Diablo or Devil. In fifth place, we have a cursed wallet. So this tale begins in October of 1972 when an officer at the United States Military Academy contacted the Warrens a day before they were scheduled to present a lecture to the cadets there, informing them that a curious security problem had arisen and could they possibly help? Now obviously they said yes, or else we wouldn't be talking right now. So the next day at a little past 4 in the afternoon, they entered the gates of the academy and were escorted to the office of Major Donald Wilson. So the major went on to explain how an unaccountable breach of security was occurring in the home of West Point's commanding general, and asked the major if he knew the nature of the problem, to which the man replied that there was a ghost in the general's quarters. So the Warrens were soon escorted to meet the general and his wife, where they were directed into a sitting room, where the general explained that, well, nothing macabre had happened. A number of curious incidents had occurred without any kind of explanation. So, some background: in the basement of that building there is a private study that at the time was kept locked and secure, but no matter how many times the bunk in there was made up, it was always found ripped apart later. Upstairs, ghosts had been seen flitting about the house. Oh, and personal belongings and other important articles were regularly found missing. The man emphasized not stolen, but just missing temporarily. Later, all these stolen items would be found upstairs, neatly laid out on the dresser in the general's bedroom. So he asked Ed if this could be, caused by a ghost, and Ed confirmed that it was indeed a possibility, and probably like a human ghosty and not a demonic spirit. Lorraine offered to walk throughout the home to try and, establish where the spirit might be present, while Ed and Major Wilson headed for the basement with the key to the downstairs study. As usual, the bunk was torn apart as though someone had been sleeping in it, while nothing else was disturbed. So while Lorraine did her walk through the house, she picked up impressions of the powerful individuals who had spent time in the home in many, many years over the years, but hardly any sense of a mischievous spirit. She offered to enter a trance state later that evening, after the presentation, to attempt to contact the spirit, and the group, was like, alright, you do you, let's try this. So much later that night, after the events of the day, the group made its way upstairs to the MacArthur bedroom. All lights were turned off but one, and Lorraine closed her eyes. She described seeing a black man wearing a dark uniform with no markings who was overtaken with a sense of fear, guilt, and lack of acceptance. He told her that he'd been accused of killing and his cell was in the basement, but the army had exonerated him of that crime. He was very sorry and could not hold his sorrow any longer. He told her that his name was Greer and, spelled it out clearly for Lorraine, and she was able to convince him to pass over into the light. So after she exited her trance, Lorraine gave a complete description of the man and said at the end that he had simply vanished, and mentioned that he had left his wallet in that downstairs bunker. So the general is adamant that based on the uniform Lorraine had described, no black men had served at West Point during that time. But, he mentioned he would look into it and thank the Warrens for their time. Goodbye, alright, sure. A few weeks later though, Ed and Lorraine received a phone call from the general. It was discovered that a black man, a porter by the name of, Greer, had served there. So he had been assigned to the Thayer mansion in the early 19th century, and he'd been accused of committing death, but the army did exonerate him of it. His records had been out of order, and he would now be officially filed as deceased. Also, the walls in the bunker had been renovated, and the wallet was finally found. What do you know? The army offered to mail it to the Warrens just to be safe, and it has stayed in their museum ever since. In fourth place, we have the Snedeker family rosary beads. And as you might expect, this true story begins in the witching hour, in the wee small hours of the morning. Because if rosary beads aren't scary enough. One night, very late at night, Ed and Lorraine were contacted by this family who had just moved into a house on Meriden Avenue in Southington. Specifically, the mother of the family unit and a niece who came to stay with the family were on the phone. And, So originally what they found and bought was a big and seemingly welcoming home. But what they didn't know when they bought it was that it was a former funeral home. Oh, and fun fact, the morticians at the funeral home were allegedly involved in necrophilia, or performing sex acts with corpses. And what used to be the showroom for the coffins was now where the younglings were. And just down the hall from that was the place where the bodies were prepared for viewing. Yeah, not grim at all. So the boys were the first to start talking about things they had seen and experienced, saying they were absolutely terrified, and the parents, chastised them at first for it, but the boys were so scared they started sleeping on the floor in the living room. Among the sounds they would hear were the sound of chains pulling the coffins upstairs, and there were no more coffins in the house. So the woman who called the Warrens were terrified, with the niece in a small bedroom in the back of the house, and the covers on her bed were levitating around her like there was a fan blowing them around. Lorraine said while the mother was on the phone with her, even more bizarre events started happening. So remember those rosary beads? Yeah, she had them in her hand, and while she was speaking, the beads were actually being pulled apart and falling to the floor. Lorraine and Ed went over the next morning with the family's parish priest, and a blessing of the house seemed to do absolutely nothing to calm things down. And that's when the Warrens decided to call the bishop's office. So the church eventually sent an exorcist, which seemed to sort of do the trick, but not before one last hurrah from whatever the heck was believed to be haunting the house, because demons don't like to give up without a fight. There was this huge tree in front of the house, and half the tree, with no wind, broke off and fell on the property. The family moved the heck out of Dodge a short time later, and Ed and Lorraine kept the rosary beads that had been pulled apart, because if a demonic spirit can touch a Catholic relic, that means it's been infested with something absolutely awful, and they didn't want to risk the beads spreading throughout the world and causing even more damage. Yeah, that makes sense. In third place, we have a long black spike. So what appears to the innocent eye is nothing but a fence stake, perhaps left over from a construction project of sorts, actually holds a history of sadness and evildoing. Being the oldest item listed today, its history dates back to its use in the 1700s. While the name of the witch it belonged to has been lost to time, the spike was originally used in a black mass ritual in an attempt to summon Satan himself to this world. The witch we're speaking of had attempted to curse the stake over the course of her pregnancy, hoping that it would become strong enough to take the soul of her womb in exchange for the devil. During the ritual, she plunged the stake into the flesh as sacrifice, but while it strengthened her relationship with Satan, it did not succeed in bringing him to Earth. The stake was passed down as a family heirloom, bringing a feeling of longing and sadness to any that held it until it was finally acquired by the Warrens. Knowing that the museum is technically closed, I worry if any vandals break in, the damage they could do with something that looks so unassuming, but it's so dangerous. In second place, we have the Carlson's knick-knacks. So this happily married couple in their 30s bought this old inn in New England. No big. So Nathan Carlson traveled a lot during the week, but his wife, Alexandra, was home all the time to take care of their 2 daughters. Not long after moving in, Mrs. Carlson and her daughter began hearing footsteps on the second floor where, in the past, lodgers used to stay. During the afternoon and late into the night, they'd hear dragging, heavy-booted footsteps move across the floor above them. Mrs. Carlson's older sister, who lived nearby, occasionally stayed overnight in the house and also heard these footsteps. The Carlsons had rooms set aside elsewhere in the house for, live and farm help, and these men would hear the footsteps walking in circles around their bed. Sometimes, while Mrs. Carlson would be asleep at night, she'd be awakened by the spirits in the home, which would actually yank the covers off the bed while she was, in it. She later found out that very same thing happened to the farm help, which explained why the men tended to, quit so soon after they were hired. Eventually, the infestation phenomena upgraded into whisperings that could be heard behind closed doors. However, when Mrs. Carlson or her older sister checked the room where the whisperings were coming from, there was never anyone present. Although these spirits projected words that were often audible enough to be heard, the woman could never quite identify the language that was being used. And as time went on, the harassment continued. After the missus would straighten up the house, knick-knacks and other little items would never be quite where she left them. Outside the house at night, lights would be seen in the attic, although there was no electricity up there. While painting a room one day, the heat was suddenly drawn away, and Mrs. Carlson felt a hand touch her shoulder. She said she became so angry that she threw the paintbrush in the direction where she believed the entity to be, and told it out loud, "I don't know who you are or what you want, but you're not gonna get me." Oh yeah, real smart. So this phenomenon went on almost daily, since this infestation had occurred in the house a long time ago. Exact date unknown. Both the kitchen and the bathroom water faucets would suddenly turn themselves on, full force at the same time. And on occasion, Mrs. Carlson would hear 3 knocks at the front door, which, that's a sign of an inhuman presence. But whenever she'd go to the door, there would be nobody there. On the second floor, a visitor reported seeing a snake on the window ledge after hearing 3 taps on the window, yet there was no nearby tree the reptile could have climbed. Ew, snakes, nope. Oh, it gets worse. While living in the house, the Carlsons had another spawn. And one night, while the missus was watching television in the living room, she suddenly heard a tremendous, powerful explosion. When she jumped up to check, thinking, the furnace had kaboomed, she found the door to the infant's room violently torn open. Objects were still swinging and vibrating, and the temperature in the nursery was equal to a meat locker. Although the spirits in the home had evidently tried to kill the youngling, the little one managed to live through the experience. Thank goodness. However, when the spawn reached 3 years of age, Mrs. Carlson was walking past him as he played with some knickknacks from the living room when he suddenly let go with a loud shriek saying, "You stepped on Beatrice!" So Mrs. Carlson put down the laundry she'd been carrying and asked, "Who?" To which he responded that Beatrice was his friend who told him what to do. Mrs. Carlson then told her son to ask Beatrice who she was, and after a pause he replied that Beatrice had told him to tell her that she's a witch. So the mom took away the items the boy was playing with and almost sent him into hysterics in the process. She tossed him into a basket in her bedroom closet, somewhere the boy was forbidden to go without her permission, and didn't really think about it until later that night when she was in bed by herself and saw a large black form in the room with her. She described the entity as being, blacker than the blackest night, moving slowly around the room, freezing her with fright. I swear I'm not a poet. Before the black mask went away, it transmuted into a globe of synthetic light about the size of a basketball, while producing a deafening roar, which she compared to a blasted furnace. This went on for many nights until the Warrens were called in, and like many other times I've mentioned today, took a tour of the home, blessed it, and realized the knickknacks were directly tied to the entity. Now, they've never described them in detail, so I don't have any clear photos to discuss today, but I'm assuming they're around the size of action figures if a 3-year-old was able to play with them. In first place, we have Bathsheba's jewelry box. So this is probably the most famous case on today's list. In January of 1971, the Perron family moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, where Carolyn, Roger, and their 5 daughters began to notice strange occurrences almost immediately. So this started with events that most of us probably wouldn't even register. Carolyn would notice that the broom went missing or seemed to move from place to place on its own, and the young girls of the home began to notice spirits around the house. Carolyn then brought it upon herself to research the history of the home and discovered that it had been in the same family for 8 generations, and that many of them had passed under mysterious or horrible circumstances. The most haunting spirit of the home is that of witch Bathsheba Sherman. Being fairly well off, Bathsheba and her husband Judson had a son, Herbert, born when Bathsheba was about 37 years old, and while the couple gave birth to 3 others, they were unable to survive past the age of 7. One of the passings of a neighbor's ward in her care drew public attention during a post-mortem examination, when it was determined that the fatal wound was caused by a large sewing needle that had been impaled at the base of the skull. It's believed Bathsheba took offense to Carolyn moving into what she considered her home and wanted to take back that control. So the most notable incident overall was one afternoon when Carolyn said that she had been lying on the sofa and out of nowhere felt a piercing type of pain in her calf, and then the muscle began to spasm. And upon examination, she noticed a puddle of redness at the point of impact. She checked for bees or anything else that could have caused the puncture in her leg, but found nothing. In her daughter's book, Andrea Perron describes the wound as perfectly circular, as if a large sewing needle had impaled her skin. Now, if I were to summarize the entire hell the Perron family endured for the decade they lived in what they referred to as the Old Arnold Estate, we'd be here for an hour. But during one of the last instances, The Warrens were called in to help the ailing family, and they removed a box from the home after thoroughly blessing it, believing that it was acting as a conduit for Bathsheba's demonic energy to affect the home, this being the jewelry box. In 5th place, we have a Satanic Idol. This story began in 1991 when a deer hunter was walking through the woods in Connecticut, close to where Ed and Lorraine resided. The hunter got lost and after some time stumbled upon a raised, circular rock formation with the idol in question standing in the middle of it. It is believed that the formation was common with folks who practiced devil worship in the 70s. The hunter began to feel uncomfortable and left the area, deciding to make his way back to his car, and along the way he noticed an elderly gentleman walking alongside him who was dressed in head-to-toe black. The man in black never spoke a single word to the deer hunter. Now the hunter was getting more nervous by the second, and also more lost, and unsure of his directional path. Desperate, he turned to the mysterious figure and simply asked, "How do I get out of here?" Luckily for our narrator, the man in black pointed in a direction and then disappeared. The hunter was so thrown off by that day that he reached out to Ed, who requested to be brought to the same area. Now the hunter wasn't 100% sure he could find the exact location, but was willing to try. Together, the two men were able to stumble through the forest, and without the aid of the man in black this time, found the rock fountain. Ed removed the demonic idol from the area and placed it in the museum, and that's when things got a little weirder. Approximately 3 days after removing the idol, Lorraine collapsed for no known reason, and she was transported to the hospital where no one could identify what was wrong with her. Thankfully, after 3 more days, she recovered. Now Ed believed that this was caused by the gentleman in black, who was believed to have been a high priest in a satanic cult, as a form of payback for removing the satanic idol. In 4th place, we have a conjuring book. So one night, after returning home from a night out with Ed, Lorraine was reviewing the calls left on the answering machine when she found one from a distraught woman who introduced herself as a Mrs. Sandy Foster, who nervously described a very distressing situation and begged the Warrens to return her call. So even though it was like 12:40 in the morning, Lorraine immediately tried to call her back, and while the phone rang continuously, the connection was broken. Lorraine tried a few more times, going so far as to contact the phone operator and the operator's supervisor, who ran tests on the phone line and frustratingly didn't find anything weird. The next day, when the Warrens returned home from church, Lorraine immediately phoned the Foster home again. This time, Mrs. Foster answered the phone on the second ring and mentioned that the phone had never rang the night before, and Lorraine made the decision to go pay the Fosters a visit that afternoon. She and Ed arrived at around 2 p.m. and met not only Mrs. Foster and her husband, but also their 3 offspring, Abby, Joel, and Hannah, who had experienced most of the phenomena. Ed arranged his recording gear on a nearby table while Lorraine asked her permission to walk the house, which she was immediately granted. Mrs. Foster brought up that her daughter Meg, the 3 offspring Abby, Joel, and Meg, who had experienced most of the phenomena. Ed arranged his recording gear on a nearby table while Lorraine asked her permission to walk the house, which she was immediately granted. Mrs. Foster brought up that her daughter Meg had always been interested in the occult and had purchased a book on conjuring as a gift for Meg, and based off of the description Ed gave of it, I believe it was a copy of the Ars Goetia. Now Meg admitted to attempting to summon a few of the spirits in the book, but had lost hope because nothing had happened. Ed prompted further, asking for specifics on the experiences that had happened in the last week when only the younglings were home. So, let's set the scene. The boys were already in bed, and Meg had just taken a shower. After going downstairs to make sure the doors were locked and, the lights were off, Meg returned upstairs to the sounds of running water, and the faucets had turned back on without any human's touch. Now downstairs, the lights and the radio had turned back on as well. Meg went downstairs and watched the radio dial moving on its own. After turning it off again, she got halfway up the stairs when she felt an icy cold hand touch her on the shoulder, just for a second in the dark. Now Meg bolted up the rest of the stairs, into her room, shut the door, turned off the lights, and hid under her covers. Outside the door, sounds of heavy footsteps caused her to suddenly shake under her covers. And then, more noises joined in with the mysterious steps. A door downstairs slammed shut, accompanied by furniture being pushed around and crashing, almost as if an angry person had broken into remodel. When Meg was able to open her eyes again, she saw a silver light come out of the woods and glide into her room. The next thing she knew, some hand yanked her hair 3 times. Each time it pulled harder, until the 3rd time it made her eyes water. Now, she ran into her brother's room for safety, and he confirmed that he was also terrified by hearing the assorted unknown noises, accompanied by loud whispering he could not make out. The duo eventually gathered enough courage to call their parents at the home they were at, but by the time the adults returned, all of the paranormal action had paused, and they were convinced the offspring were making it up. On the second occasion, everything that happened was almost the same as the first, but this time they involved the family dog, who was snarling at something that no one could see. Now, Joel remembered it as strange because the dog was deaf and could barely hear noise. So when the Wards were hiding in a bedroom on this occasion, instead of a silver figure, they saw a dark purplish cloud that they were unable to look at directly. So Lorraine at this point had returned and reported that she had experienced an inhuman presence throughout the home and asked Meg if she possessed, black conjuring candles in her room. And when she responded yes, Ed told the family that he and Lorraine can handle everything, but they should maybe head out for a drive while it was happening, for safety. Ed and Lorraine got to work the moment the Fosters left, determined to discover the true nature of the spirit's presence in order to dispel it. For provocation purposes, Ed used used a crucifix and holy water, scattering the water at all 4 points of the cellar floor, and saying aloud, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command all spirits, whether human or diabolical, to leave this dwelling and never return." On the first floor, Ed repeated the same procedure in each of the rooms. This process, known to any exorcist as binding, requires the infesting spirit to either show itself or move on. Having bound the cellar and all downstairs room without incident, the Warrens were ready to approach the second floor, where they knew difficulty was lurking. But as they prepared to act, a telepathically projected feeling of dread came over them, which is a distinct indication of an inhuman demonic presence. They pressed on and began climbing the staircase to the second floor. But as hard as they tried, neither Ed nor Lorraine could get any more than halfway up. Pushing against them was some impenetrable, unyielding force. So slowly, the Warrens backed down the stairs so as not to be knocked over backwards. And at the bottom of the stairs, for a brief second, diabolical laughter rang out. So, annoyed, Ed threw more holy water on the stairs, which caused the pressure to diminish enough to let them reach the top. They were able to bind almost all the rooms without incident, saving Megs for last. Ed swung the door wide open, and he and Lorraine immediately felt the need to take a step back from the horrible sense of misery emanating from the room. With a steely composure, Ed walked into the room, cross in hand. Though no physical presence was there to be seen, the bedroom was freezing cold. One last time, Ed threw holy water in all 4 corners of the room, commanding, "Give us some sign of departure or an exorcism will be conducted here this very day." Almost instantly, the morbid sense of misery began to drain away, and the temperature in the room gradually returned to normal. So Meg's bedroom did contain those black conjuring candles, occult vestments, and books containing the rites for rituals of all sorts. Ed placed the items in the gal's trash basket, set them out in the hallway, and then sealed the room by reading a prescribed prayer of sanctification. He brought them back to his home for safekeeping, and that's one copy of the Ars Goetia I have no need to read. Thank you. See? I've told y'all, don't summon beings! In third place, we have a shadow doll. Among one of the first haunted items visible to those who visit the Warren Occult Museum is a shadow doll, which boasts bird feathers and a genuine human tooth, and she's just overall terrifying to look at. I'm calling it now, she better join that TV universe one day. For reference, a shadow doll is a statue or deity of sorts that is made specifically for harm to be used at the center of curses. I happen to know the steps for the most common curse, and while I'll leave out a step for safety, I promise I'll elaborate. Now, the caster would first need to take a picture of the doll, write a curse on the back of the photo, and then send it to whoever the curse is aimed for. You know, hopefully you've got their mailing address. The person who receives the picture with the curse will sadly invite that curse into their lives. Oh, almost forgot. The doll is also going to appear in that person's dreams, so enjoy your nightmares, folks. While not too much is known about the origins of this specific doll, it was initially purchased in a secondhand store under the assumption that it was simply, you know, an antique. I've got a couple of old dolls myself, and I'm shuddering to think about what they would do if activated by any kind of curse. Some of them talk enough already. In second place, we have black magic math, which is a concept in theosophy, mysticism, and the paranormal, of a materialized thought form, typically in human form such as an imaginary friend or being that is created through spiritual practice and intense concentration. In simpler English, the masks act as a representation of the practice, which is a form of mysticism that involves creating sentient and autonomous beings separate from oneself. The concept of tulpas and their creation, including the word tulpa, come from a closed Tibetan Buddhist practice, with tulpa being a Tibetan word for a creature of the mind. Tulpas did not become part of Western paranormal lore until around the 1970s, and those who practice have been cited as wearing masks similar to Halloween ones in order to take on the appearance of whatever the mask looks like. If anyone is curious about modern practices and appropriations of tulpamancers, the interweb origins can be traced back to 4chan message boards in 2009, and I'm not going to elaborate on just how awful that sentence was to utter. Oh, it gets worse. The communities gained popularity when adult fans of My Little Pony started discussing tulpas of characters from the Friendship is Magic television series. The fans attempted to use meditation and lucid dreaming techniques to create imaginary friends. Well, I think that about sums that up, don't you? In first place, we have the Black Lace Veil. So after one of their many public lectures, Ed was conversing with a couple that had been in the audience, where the boy introduced himself as Alan and explained that he'd brought his girlfriend Lonnie to the lecture because he suspected that she'd been overtaken by some occult influence. He explained that when his girlfriend became angry, her features would change into something resembling a wolf, and then the voice of a different person would speak from inside her. When Lorraine walked over to join the group, Lonnie experienced an episode of instantaneous possession and lurched out in an attempt to attack Lorraine. This incident terrified everyone in the vicinity, with the Warrens ending the audience chat session immediately, before Ed escorted the couple to an offstage room while Lorraine stayed outside. In the backstage room, the girl was fully under possession, breathing heavily, and her facial features had transformed into the wolf-like appearance the boy had talked about. After about 10 minutes, the possession passed, and Lonnie was lucid enough to explain, dealing with memory loss, along with losing hours and days of her life over the last 3 months, which is a symptom common in possession. She went on to share that originally her now boyfriend, Alan, had refused all of her advances and bribery attempts at becoming hers, and she had resorted to visiting a store prominent in selling tools to help with witchcraft, purchasing there a book on the black arts, and later that night performing a ritual for acquiring lovers. This ritual involved, you guessed it, the black lace veil, on top of which she placed a crown of goat horns before renouncing God in her baptism, along with swearing allegiance to Satan, finishing the ritual by washing down the vow with a cup of animal scarlet elixir. About a month after Lonnie performed the ritual, Alan began paying her the attention she craved, making her entitled world perfect. What she hadn't counted on, however, was that she was now in debt to the demonic, having given them permission to enter her life. Ed knew immediately that Lonnie would have to undergo an exorcism as soon as possible, and made contact with a priest the next morning, who was able to come assist with the procedure. Upon arrival, the priest insisted on testing the spirit, so he instructed Lonnie to close her eyes and slowly count to 20, while his assistant stood behind her and placed a cross around 6 inches behind her head. The entity possessing the girl suddenly went wild, screaming, "Take it away! It burns! Take it away!" During the exorcism, it kept screaming, "She's mine! She's mine! Her soul is mine!" in reference to Lonnie. It was eventually separated from Lonnie, but just before it departed, the thing vowed it would return to another. The Warrens brought the black lace veil, goat horns, cup, and the conjuring book home with them so she would be safe from possession, but the tale of the veil doesn't end here. Months later, when Ed was in a meeting with a lady who was manifesting different personalities, some male, some female, and some that couldn't even be called human, but all making extremely threatening statements, her eyes began to wander, and when they landed on the black veil, she jumped up, grabbed the veil, and clutched it to her chest. Her features immediately began to transform into those of a wild, sneering creature distinct from the otherwise attractive girl. Ed drew 2 vials of water to himself, one unblessed, the other blessed by an exorcist, and moved away from what was no longer this woman, but an inhuman spirit, a lesser devil of hell. Horrid moaning and various animal sounds came from the girl as Ed blessed her, banishing the demon away for now a second and final time. And that brings us to the end of our list, and I'm glad all of those items are still kicking around the Warren Museum for safety and not out in the open.
Number 5. The Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. The Book of Abramelin, or more formally, the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, is an old Jewish magic text that is thought to date back at some point in the 14th or 15th century. Now, it wasn't the initial publication of this book that gave it its notoriety. Instead, it was when it was 19th and 20th century magicians who were in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is a British secret society dedicated to the practice, research, and upholding of old occult magic ways. But hush hush, you didn't hear that from me. One of the founders of the Golden Dawn, SLM Mathers, created the first ever English translation of the book in the 1890s, drawing from a previously established 17th century French translation. Now, Mathers' translation quickly became the definite magic text of the 19th century, eventually helping inspire Aleister Crowley to inspire his system of magic, the legendary occultist and fixture of one of the best Ozzy Osbourne songs ever. That solo still goes, man. Now, there's all kinds of spells and magic inside this text. Some real highlights include spells on how to conjure somebody and turn them into a donkey, how to summon a monkey to do your bidding, that sounds great, and how to bring forth spirits to fetch you goods. The big key point in this text, however, is an epic, multi-month spanning ritual that, if performed correctly, will allow the sorcerer to commune with their own guardian angel. The book theorizes that everyone has a guardian angel and that they are another part of their essence, a spiritual other half of yourself. The ritual involves, I don't know how to say this politely. You have to, they say you have to get blissfully intimate with your other half. Once the honeymoon period is over, the caster then has to summon up and conquer unredeemed spirits of the infernal regions of hell to conquer them. And then they'll be able to master the spirit domain. That sounds like a lot of irredeemed spirits. I hope my angel might help out a little bit with that. This all sounds very complicated, so all things considered, maybe it's for the best that this one's locked away. Seems like heavy reading, not before bedtime. And if you're looking for more true tales of terror, fake frightening fribs, cursed relics, ancient evils, aliens, cryptids, conspiracies, ghouls, goblins, and pretty much everything spooky you can think of, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. Stay subscribed, but way more importantly, stay scared. Okay, let's keep going. Whole lot more video to get through. Number 4, Book of Soyga. The Book of Soyga, also known by a more complicated name, the Alderia Siva Soyga Vocor, is an occult text that hails back from the 15th century. I'm pretty sure just saying that name out loud in front of the camera, I probably caused a curse on the office, so I'm sorry about that. This text would have been lost to time, just another forgotten cursed manuscript, if it weren't for the obsessive efforts of John Dee, a 16th century polymath who had his hands in just about every field of study. Polymath is a fancy word for a guy who studies just about everything, and Dee practiced chemistry, physics, astronomy, and also the occult. You know, there's always more to learn, right? Mr. D was particularly interested in contacting angels to learn the secrets of the universe. And this book contains a litany of recipes for magic spells and all sorts of writings on demonology and astrology, but most importantly, and what caught Mr. D's attention, is that the book is said to include the names and genealogies of all of heaven's angels. Dee believed that the book contained an ancient divine message written in a language spoken to by Adam, the true unspoiled word of God. That's a pretty big statement. Now, much like the Voynich manuscript, which I'll mention a little later in the video, so put a pin in that for now, it had 36 cryptic tables that remained undeciphered for centuries. Dee attempted at one point to crack the code with the help of a mystic who convinced Dee that he could channel the angels for him. Dee allegedly was so desperate to unlock the contents of this book that when his mystic told him it was part of the ritual that he be allowed a night with John Dee's wife, he agreed. That's the oldest trick in the book, man. The old "I'll let you talk to angels if I can go out with your wife" gamble. Ugh, can't believe you fell for it. Dee's wife would end up birthing a son, Theodore Dee, the fatherhood of which was disputed, to say the least. John Dee was never able to crack the code in his lifetime and decipher the Book of Soyga, and perhaps for the best, as it was said he was warned that man was never meant to uncover those secrets, and that knowledge would end his life. The book is now said to reside in the British Library, although digital copies are available. Read it at your own risk, and if somebody says they can translate it for you, just make sure you really read everything on the fine print in the contract before you sign that, okay? Just looking out for you. Number 3, the Grand Grimoire. That is so fun to say. This next entry has been nicknamed the Gospel of Satan. So if you're looking for an indication as to whether or not this book is, evil, there you go. They had to put that on a sticker, put it on the cover right next to the Oprah's Book Club recommendation. This book is said to have originally been written by a man possessed by the devil sometime in the 16th century. It's an infamous occult text and is said to contain dark incantations, spells and rituals, tools on how to force demons to do one's bidding, and even some instructions for a little necromancy 101 for fledgling dead raisers. It's not all brimstone and hellfire though. There are also reports on how to make pacts with spirits for personal gain, rituals to win the lottery, talk to ghosts, make yourself invisible, and even adorably, how to win love. Never heard of a demon working to help someone fall in love. Now, all that sounds cool, definitely. I know I would love to have like a little skeleton minion who could help me with chores, maybe be like my little buddy. I love playing a necromancer in Skyrim, but these things don't really work out if you don't know what you're doing. Take a look at Full Metal Alchemist, that didn't work, they didn't know what they were doing. Even opening this book is considered equivalent to selling your soul to the devil. Soon as you crack the spine, it's like signing the contract. Because of the book's nefarious reputation, the original copy of the manuscript has been sealed away inside the Vatican's secret archives, and not currently available to the public. So I don't think whatever they're listing on Amazon as the Grand Grimoire for $10 is the real Grand Grimoire. Number 2, the Voynich manuscript. The Voynich manuscript has got to be one of my favorite stories of a mysterious manuscript ever. I guess that's why I put it at number 2. Unlike a lot of entries on this list, it's actually very easy to come across a digital copy of the Voynich manuscript. It's available to read online. The only trouble is reading it honestly probably won't do you a lick of good, since it's written in a language no one has ever heard of and there's no record of it ever having existed. Yale University has the entire thing up and available online if you're feeling confident enough that you can take a crack at it and feel like banging your head against a brick wall for a few hours. The book is a handwritten, hand-illustrated codex of 240 pages of pure mystery, featuring gorgeous illustrations and typography, and what the book is about is your guess is as good as mine, honestly. Carbon dating suggests that it stems from the 15th century, and analysis of the style of the text and illustrations within suggests that it could have been penned during the Italian Renaissance. But just about every single aspect of this thing is shrouded in mystery, We don't even know what it's truthfully called. The Voynich manuscript is the name it was given after the initial owner, Wilfrid Voynich, purchased it in 1912 and brought it to public attention for the first time. Sorry, not the first owner, I'm sure several other people owned it before him. As such, the language inside the book is occasionally referred to as Voynichese. Now, some pages are missing, lost to time completely, and the pages we do have are just a puzzle. Some are foldable sheets of various sizes, some pages have wondrously drawn diagrams or illustrations showing things like plants, some fictional, some real, and astrological symbols, drawings of people. Over the years, there have been several efforts to try and decode and document the book and figure out just what it is. A prevailing theory, admittedly a boring one, is that it's a guide to botany written in a mysterious script, a forgotten language, an uncrackable code, an incredibly convoluted hoax. Of course, with any good mystery, there are some wild theories. Some say the Voynich manuscript could be written from an extraterrestrial gifted to humanity, or written in demonic script perhaps, or that biblical language that we were mentioning in the book Soyga a few points ago. Like I said, it's available online, so I leave this up to you. If you manage to crack it, let us know down below in the comments. We're all clamoring for it. And number 1, the Codex Gigas. When it comes to cursed and demonic books, the Codex Gigas is one of the biggest ones around. Like, literally. Codex Gigas translates to giant book, which isn't exactly a scary name. When you see the size of this behemoth, it starts to make a little bit more sense. This thing is massive. 2 feet long. Now, giant, oversized, illuminated manuscripts were pretty common around the area the book was penned, but this one stood out for its immense size and the dark rumors surrounding the supposedly cursed text. Don't even try reading this thing, just lifting it will give you a hernia. That's the curse. It's occasionally been dubbed Satan's Bible due to the legend surrounding its origin. It's a good story, so get cozy. Supposedly, the legend goes that a monk by the name of Herman the Recluse, which is also what they used to call me, was condemned to death for heresy and was to be walled up alive and starved. In a desperate plea to save himself, Herman tried to convince the prior and the abbot as a whole that if he could pen a manuscript to honor God's glory, and that it would contain all of human knowledge and all of human history in one book, and if he could pen it in one night, he would be let free. The abbot agreed, thinking this was, of course, impossible. Herman wrote until midnight, wearing his fingertips down, and in a moment of desperation, made a prayer to Lucifer and asked for his eternal soul in exchange for the book's completion in order to repent for his sins. I totally get it. You know, I gotta be honest, I have done some pretty nutso stuff trying to make sure my scripts get in time for deadline. Haven't quite sold my soul to the devil yet. I usually just rail Red Bulls, but I'd probably make a similar deal under a similar deadline. Now, I don't want to poke any holes in Herman's logic here, but I will say maybe selling your soul to the devil is part of the reason you got into this mess in the first place, because that does sound a little bit like heresy, but it's not my place to judge. I'm not an archdeacon. A variation of the legend states that Herman worked for years on the manuscript, day and night, but still was unable to complete it in his lifetime and asked for the devil's assistance. Anyway, no matter the story, the legend states that Satan signed the Bible with a particularly terrifying illustration of himself. I mean, take a look at it, it's horrifying looking. The book contains a birth of information. Like they said, it was supposed to be everything humanity had attained up to that point in one big book. These days, the Codex Gigas is preserved in the Natural Museum in Sweden, where you can admire the penmanship of Herman the Recluse and his ghost author, Satan.
Number 5. The Manson Blood Painting. Charles Manson was the infamous cult leader who formed a group of mostly young women, teaching them that they were the reincarnations of the original Christians and that he was Jesus Christ. Manson began using his followers for extortion, taking a music teacher who they believed had inherited a large fortune hostage in his home and demanding that he join the cult and turn over the money. The man maintained that they were mistaken, and Manson attacked him with a sword before having one of his followers finish the job. In the cult's most famous incident, Manson sent 4 family members to the home of Hollywood actress Sharon Tate with instructions for them to end the lives of Tate and the 4 guests who were staying with her. The next night, these family members were joined by 3 others and brought by Manson to the home of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, where they broke in and tied up the 2 residents at Manson's instructions. He then ordered them to dispatch the victims and left. Although it hasn't been conclusively proven, the Manson family are believed to be responsible for at least 15 other deaths, with Manson himself claiming at one point that he was responsible for 35 total deaths. Manson was apprehended and remained in prison until his execution in 2017. Even while in custody, he maintained a dedicated group of admirers, and after his death, his ashes were scattered at his funeral, and an admiring artist gathered some of them up. The artist, Ryan Almighty, then used their own blood in order to paint a picture of the cult leader, using Manson's real ashes to fill in the eyes on the portrait. Many people who see the painting report it having a charged feeling, and many people refuse to look into the eyes of the Manson painting out of fear for what could happen. It doesn't have too much of a reputation for being haunted, but come on. If ever there was a painting that was begging to be haunted or cursed, it would be the one made with the actual human remains of Charles Manson. This painting should be destroyed or locked away in the Warrens Museum just to be safe. Why wait until more creepy activity is linked to this disturbing painting? Number 4. The Hanging Man. This haunted painting is actually linked to a haunted photograph, making it twice as haunted as some of the art on this list. It all started when a photographer named James Kidd took a seemingly innocuous photo of a wooden cart next to a barn. Kidd thought nothing of it until he had the photo developed and saw a ghostly figure had made its way into the frame. On the left side of the cart, he could see a headless and hanging man. He showed the photo to others, who searched for any sign of doctoring, but could find none. It was then that this painting caught the attention of a painter named Laura P. Laura claims that she felt drawn to the image and decided that she had to make an oil painting based on the photograph. While painting the picture, she reported feeling deeply uneasy, but she pushed through to finish her art. The painting was hung at a local business, but was soon taken down after it reportedly began moving on its own and caused several important papers to go missing. Laura then put the painting up in her own home. She soon began to experience strange occurrences. These included objects being knocked over or broken, mysterious knocking on the doors, strange leaks, and perhaps most disturbing, the apparition of the headless man in her home. Once word of the haunted painting got out, she received several offers from collectors to buy the painting. She has so far refused, claiming that she is afraid of what the painting could do in the homes of others. If this is truly the only thing preventing her from getting rid of this painting, which is apparently causing her to see headless ghosts, perhaps the right move is to give the painting to the Warren Museum, who, if nothing else, would know what they are signing up for, and could take it off of her hands. Number 3. The John Wayne Gacy clown paintings. John Wayne Gacy was the notorious serial murderer operating out of Chicago from the late 60s until the late 70s. He would lure victims into his home with the promise of illicit substances. He would then trick the young men into putting on a pair of handcuffs, claiming that he was going to demonstrate a magic trick. He would then force himself on them, hurt them for his own amusement, and then finally asphyxiate them before hiding their remains in his crawl space. In the 11 years that he operated, he was responsible for the deaths of over 33 people before he was arrested on December 21st, 1978, and sentenced to execution by lethal injection. Gacy had appeared for years to be the perfect family man, being an active member of his community, and in a detail that the media became obsessed with, volunteering as a clown who would perform at parades, fundraisers, and children's hospitals. This was unrelated to his crimes, but was such an odd detail that the press dubbed him the Killer Clown. This apparently served as the inspiration for Stephen King's It, and since then, clowns just haven't been able to catch a break. While awaiting his fate on death row, Gacy took up painting, creating several portraits of himself dressed as Pogo the Clown. He is believed to have created over 2,000 paintings in prison before his death in 1994. After this, his attorney auctioned the paintings off, with several of them being purchased and burned in a bonfire attended by the families of his victims. Of course, this just made the paintings that remained more valuable and rare, and they have been known to show up in auctions where they are purchased for tens of thousands of dollars by people with questionable morals and taste. Some of these collectors came to regret their purchase of the Gacy clown paintings, with some claiming to experience vivid nightmares and visions of Gacy's crimes and victims sitting at the foot of their beds, after having looked at the paintings for too long. If such claims are genuine, then perhaps it would be better to take these disturbing paintings and have them locked in the deepest, darkest corner of the Warrens' museum, prevent them from doing any harm to the people who come across them. Number 2. The Anguished Man. The tale of this rather disturbing-looking painting is strange and steeped in mystery. Every scant piece of information we have on it is more unsettling than the last. The painting of a featureless man who seems to be screaming was apparently painted by a deeply troubled artist who mixed his own blood with the paints in an effort to get the right shade of red. Not long after completing it, the artist took his own life, and the painting found its way into a woman's care. She kept it for many years, but claimed that once she put the painting up, her and her family began to see a dark, shadowy figure roaming about the house. At night, they would hear strange sounds like footsteps and crying. The woman took the painting down and kept it locked in her attic for 25 years until she died, leaving the painting to its current caretaker, Sean Robinson. Sean had been warned by his grandmother that the painting was haunted, but he thought little of it. Robinson kept the painting in his basement for about a decade before rediscovering it and putting it up. Once again, the family began seeing the dark, shadowy figure roaming the halls and hearing the sounds of weeping and moaning during the night. Sean began leaving a camera on by the painting to try and get evidence of its paranormal nature, and upon reviewing the footage, heard some odd noises and saw evidence of doors opening and closing, seemingly by themselves, and the painting falling over onto the ground. As time went on, the activity became more and more intense, with his wife seeing a strange mist and an unseen force pushing his son down the stairs. Things went from bad to worse when guests who came to see the painting began reporting intense and sudden nosebleeds. Sean takes the painting out from time to show it to paranormal investigators and television programs who want to hear his story, but otherwise, the Anguished Man is apparently kept locked away in a safe location to prevent any further harm from coming to unwitting people. As much as this might be the right move, someone like Sean, with very limited knowledge of the paranormal, might not be the right person to take care of such a dangerous piece of art, and it might be safer for him and everyone else if it were handed over to people with more experience dealing with cursed and dangerous artifacts, such as the people who run the Warrens' Occult Museum. Who knows, perhaps the painting would prefer it, and would start up a friendly relationship with the Annabelle doll, and the two would become less evil, as they have each finally found a true bosom buddy. Or maybe it would just make things worse. The point is, we will never know for sure unless we try. Number 1. The hands resist him. This painting, featuring a sad-looking young boy and a creepy doll-like girl standing in front of a window, separating them from a series of hands emerging from the darkness, was created by an artist named Bill Stoneham in 1972. It was hung in a gallery. Both the owner of the gallery and the first critic to ever review the painting both died suddenly within a year of looking at the painting. The artist then took possession of the painting, but claimed that the two children in the painting would sometimes move, leaving the frame, and on one occasion, coming out of the painting itself into the real world. The artist put the painting on eBay, telling its stories, and many people who simply looked at the listing claimed to experience odd happenings, such as hearing voices or chills, or becoming ill. The painting sold for a little over $1,000, but if it is really so powerful, perhaps it should be taken to the Occult Museum, where the harm it can do can be limited as much as possible.
Our first spot is the Anguished Man painting, a painting that's been said to be haunted by the spirit of its former artist. The Anguished Man was painted by, we have no idea, actually. Fittingly for something like this, its true origin is a mystery, but it's been said that it was painted with a mixture of the artist's own blood and paint, which explains that delightful crimson hue. The artist disappeared after painting it, and in 30 years, no one has been able to trace its origin to anyone. The earliest recorded history of the Anguished Man comes from a woman in North England who owned the painting after receiving it as a gift, and understood that there was something deeply wrong with it, but kept it anyway, I guess. After years of having it in her possession, she gave the relic off and passed it on to her grandson, Sean Robinson. Once the painting found its way into Sean's possession, he reported consistent hauntings from it, claiming that at night the painting can be heard screaming, writhing, loud noises, the painting falling off the wall in the middle of the night, and even going so far as to claim that he's seen the canvas itself twisting. Locking the painting in his basement, but feeling a compulsion to keep it locked to study it and possibly keep it safe from the outside world, Sean has recorded several videos of the Anguished Man in action if you feel like you've been getting too much sleep lately. While some skeptics might doubt that the Anguished Man is actually haunted, there is absolutely zero doubt that the painting itself is as fascinating as it is terrifying. Robert the Doll. At first glance already seems a bit unsettling, between his empty smile and the blank expression of the pet sitting on his lap. If only it ended there. Legend has it that this century-old doll is home to a malevolent spirit locked away. It's been said that misfortune comes to those who don't respect him or insult him. Robert's story begins over 100 years ago, and his true origin is somewhat disputed. It's agreed that he was owned by Robert Jean Otto, who received it as a boy, but some people claim that it was a gift from his grandfather, while locals prefer to claim nefariously that the doll was given to Robert by a servant of the house who hexed it out of resentment. Whatever the case, Robert brought trouble with him. The real Robert, or Jean as he went by, would refer to the doll as if it was a living entity, claiming that it had a will of its own. When things around the house would break, like the rest of Jean's toys being destroyed, he'd claim that Robert had done it. The family would find Jean in the middle of the night, wailing, surrounded by overturned furniture, claiming once again that Robert had done it. People would claim to see Robert out of the windows, appearing and disappearing at seemingly random times of day. While Jean no longer owns Robert, of course, Robert lives in the East Martello Museum in Florida, where it's said that even locked up he still causes havoc, causing electronics to malfunction and go haywire. Employees have reported sleepless nights, strange noises, streaks of bad luck after spending time around Robert. The museum claims too Robert gets 1 to 3 letters a day from people asking for forgiveness or asking him to place a curse on others. If you're ever in the area and you feel like checking in, just make sure you're respectful about it, okay? You never know. Number 3, the Delhi Sapphire. The Delhi Sapphire is a seemingly beautiful gem that carries with it a dark legacy. It's also known as the Gem of Sorrow, named for the misfortune it brings upon all those who've owned it. Its first owner was a British cavalryman named Colonel Ferris, who stole the gem from a sacred temple in India in the 18th century. Soon after returning to England, he was plagued with financial destitution, bringing his family to the brink of collapse. Shortly after this, his family all started to develop debilitating diseases. Ferris suspected that the gem was responsible for these wrongdoings, and attempted to pass it off to a family friend who fell gravely ill immediately after taking it in. Shortly after Ferris's friend passed, the gem was bought by Edward Heron Allen, a scientist who similarly experienced his life falling apart after acquiring the gem. In a desperate attempt to free himself of the curse, Edward threw the gem into Regent's Canal, thinking that he'd freed himself of the accursed stone. Sadly, much like the one true ring, this gem wasn't going to stay at the bottom of a river. It was fished out of the canal and quickly sold to a local jeweler, who recognized the stone as one he had mounted onto a ring for a client, one Edward Heron Allen. Thinking he was doing Edward a favor, the jeweler crafted a new ring and returned it to Edward. Isn't that nice? From there on, Edward swiftly tried to rid himself of it again, this time giving it off to a singer, who after a brief ownership, lost her voice entirely and never sang again. With the ring once again in his possession, Edward decided to end the vicious cycle of re-gifting and lock the sapphire away. He locked it in 7 stacked boxes surrounded by good luck charms and gave it to his bank to store in their vault until his passing, never to be opened, never to be sold. Heron even advised the bank that after his passing, it should be kept for another 33 years, just in case there was any residual curse smell in the box, I guess. Anyway, eventually, the sapphire found its way to a museum, as these things always do, who upon opening the 7 boxes found inside a letter reading, "This sapphire is accursed, and stained with the blood and dishonor of everyone who has ever owned it. Whoever opens this box, do with it what you wish. My advice, however, is to throw it into the sea." Number 2, James Dean's car. Absolutely nothing is cooler than driving a souped-up Porsche, and in the 1950s, there was no one cooler than James Dean. Aside from being the cultural face of 1950s teenage delusionment and an icon for outcasts of his day, James Dean had a passion for cars and racing, and had a collection of impeccable Porsches, although the last one he would ever own was a Porsche Spyder 550. It was actually commissioned for Dean, and was one of the first makes of that car produced. A souped-up Porsche capable of race speeds, it seemed like the perfect car for a hot-headed rebel. But from the moment he got it, people were wary. A friend of Dean's, actor Alec Guinness, wrote in his diary after meeting James with the car that the sports car looked sinister to me. Exhausted, hungry. I found myself saying in a voice I could hardly recognize, "Please never get in that car. You will be found dead." Normally any friend telling you outright not to get into a car would be worth paying attention to, but I feel like special triple warning should be heeded if it was Obi-Wan Kenobi telling me not to do it. Sure enough, Dean ignored, went ahead and raced the car anyway, leading to a tragic car accident that would claim the actor's life. Shortly thereafter, the Spyder was chopped for parts, where its engine was bought by Dr. William Esquirk and installed in his own car. This suspension and transmission of the spider was given to Esqueric's colleague and fellow doctor and racing enthusiast, Troy McHenry. In a race in 1956, both doctors driving cars with the Porsche's old parts both crashed, leading to the death of McHenry and injuring Esqueric. Somehow, not learning any lessons, the self-proclaimed king of customs, George Barris, purchased the mangled wreck of the 550, hoping to rebuild it as a tourist attraction, where it was sold to the National Safety Council as a harrowing display of road safety. In 1959, while in storage, the car spontaneously caught flame. The tires were sold to a private buyer who had them burst on the road, causing them to careen off. And finally, in 1960, while in transit from Miami, the car disappeared entirely. The whereabouts of the car and its pieces are currently unknown, with the only confirmed part left being a transaxle that was found in Massachusetts. And finally, at our number one spot, the Devil's Rocking Chair. When we think of a devil sitting atop a throne, our mind isn't likely to conjure up the image of a rocking chair. That's more for kindly old grandparents. But for the Glatzel family, it was all too real. Seemingly an unassuming piece of leisure furniture, this twisted piece of haunted mahogany became the focus of one of America's most notorious exorcisms. In the early 1980s, the young son of the Glatzel family, David Glatzel, claimed that he was being plagued by nightmares of a creature with jagged teeth, twisted horns, and hooves. And the family was worried, as the boy wasn't really the kind to make things up. The boy insisted that he would see this beast sitting in the chair, rocking, watching him, laughing, threatening to steal his soul away. You know, regular old imaginary friend stuff. The visions persisted and even manifested physically, with David waking up in the middle of the night with scratches, bruises, and cuts, as well as red marks around his neck, as if something had been grabbing his throat. He would convulse during the night, and a family member would watch him sleep, as he would have seizures repeatedly. David started to hiss and growl at his family, and even was reported to have spoken tongues, quoting from the Bible. Eventually it became too much for the family to bear, and professional help was brought in from, who else? Ed and Lorraine Warren, who performed multiple exorcisms, and brought in a series of priests to try and quell the spirits inside the house. Lorraine asserts that she saw the chair levitate in her time there. After a final exorcism, it's reported that the demon left young David, but found its way into his sister's fiance, one Arn Johnson. She reported the same growls, hissing, as well as slipping into periodic trances he couldn't be shook from. Tragically, Arn was involved in a conflict that led to the death of his landlord, and when he stood trial for it, insisted that he hadn't acted on it, but rather it was the demon possessing him that made him do it. He was locked away. After these dark events, the chair was kept away in storage.
Coming in number 5, we've got the organ. Thankfully, it's not an internal organ or anything like that, although, to be honest, I'm not so sure that would be any more creepy than this haunted musical instrument. Organs always tend to have a spooky sound to them, whether it's that classic bit from Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, or some old hymnals echoing through an empty church. The pipes and keys combine to create spine-chilling music more often than not. It's a classic sound used to elicit fear and atmosphere in all sorts of different environments. So of course, the Warrens brought one back to the museum. It's not a grand affair, definitely not a pipe organ or anything close to one in size and scope. However, it does make up for a general lack of volume and dynamics with an array of haunted energy. The main thing that tends to set people off about this musical instrument is the fact that it likes to play itself. It's not a player piano, nor is there any sort of mechanism inside that would suggest that it was ever meant to make music without the help of a musician. But when the clock strikes 9 p.m., or the museum's apparent witching hour, this keyed instrument starts to play. I'm sure the first person to discover this detail was sufficiently spooked. Playing on its own isn't the only oddity associated with the organ. It's also known to cause anomalous things to happen to folks who play it. One might see a strange man standing beside the stool as they play, or maybe they'll have dreams full of haunting music for a while. If you go in and hit a few keys on this organ, maybe even sit down and play a fugue, all sorts of unfortunate events may be in your near future. After the organ was retrieved from the supposedly haunted house of a reverend, it was placed in the museum. Interestingly enough, no anomalous activity was reported before it was brought back. However, the Warrens were no slouches when it came to decorating, and soon enough the organ was covered in all sorts of other interesting oddities. Now, this idea I came up with on my own, so don't take it as a fact or ask me to cite anything, but what if the things the Warrens placed upon the organ caused it to become haunted? Maybe the curses dwelling inside of those objects came out and played the organ themselves. Food for thought, for sure. Coming in number 4, we've got human skulls. Speaking of objects that may or may not be cursed but also make for great decorations, the Warrens had quite the collection of human head tops. The pearly white bone matter that makes up the shield for our most important organ. That's right, plenty of human skulls in the museum. And not just for archaeological and medical purposes, these were skulls supposedly used in different satanic rituals. Oh boy. There's one in particular that stands out thanks to its interesting coloration and decorations. The eye sockets are painted painted bright pink and really pop, and some of the teeth are a yellowy gold, and there is a large star adorning most of the skull's forehead. It's placed on an ornate stand among a plethora of other spooky knickknacks. I guess I shouldn't really be comparing a human skull to a knickknack, but here we are. Now, like I said before, the human skulls accumulated by the Warrens were supposedly used in satanic rituals quite a few times. I can't really elaborate on exactly what that would look like, but the fact that they were there means that it's possible the skulls are now cursed. The demons contacted during said rituals could have left some sort of residual energy in and around the skulls, especially because they did originate from humans. Folks have been terrified of satanic rituals for ages, often using them as shorthand for scary, morally depraved activities. We might not be able to figure out exactly what happened with these skulls, but they definitely hold some sway over folks who might visit the museum. It's morbid, it's creepy, and it smacks of the paranormal. Just hope that this kind of thing never ends up happening to your skull. Or you know what, maybe you'd prefer that the top of your head ends up in a museum. That's one way to stick around for a while, right? Coming in at number 3, we've got the Haunted Music Box. Just another classic spooky object. Where would we be today without spring-wound machines that generate tinkly renditions of famous tunes? I feel like every 10 movies or so there's a shot of a haunted music box. Maybe that's a thing of the past at this point, but we do know that the Perron family dealt with a whole lot of nonsense stemming from a music box in the first Conjuring movie. Some things that appear in the Hollywood flicks don't actually exist in the real world, and they're just there to add some intrigue. The samurai suit in the Feely Mealy game were a couple examples of that, but we'll leave it at that for now. We'll focus back on the music box instead. After playing a big role in the exorcism of Bathsheba, it gained some wicked notoriety. Folks who had seen the movie assumed that this object was cursed in exactly the same way. That's not really the case, but it is fun to imagine, right? Music boxes are classic vessels for curses, especially thanks to the general creepy vibe the music can give off. How many cheap horror creations make use of a distorted music box song and some creepy childish laughter? Actually, keep the number to yourself, I already know it's way up there. Coming in number 2, we've got the white dress. Another urban legend staple, white dresses tend to show up in ghost stories often. Murdered brides, young women gone too soon, mothers who outlive their children, the works. It's hard to pin down where the phenomenon started, but we do know that it's timeless and effective. So of course, there's a haunted white wedding dress at the Warren Occult Museum. I'd be disappointed if there wasn't. In the Conjuring franchise, this dress is said to compel any who wear it to kill their fiancé. However, that's just more movie magic. There's no such tale actually associated with the museum. However, they do display a bridal gown, veil and all, and there is a supposed story that goes along with it. It's meant to represent the White Lady of Union Graveyard in Connecticut. A classic urban legend that we've definitely touched on here before, it's the tale of an unfortunate soul who roams the roads at night, causing accidents and freaking out motorists. Apparently one time she even materialized and put a dent in someone's fender. Unfortunately, the white dress in the museum isn't actually from the White Lady or anything related to her. It's just meant to represent the legend, add a little bit of class to the joint. Because who doesn't love looking at a pretty white dress? And finally, at number 1, we've got the Conjuring Mirror. To cap things off, we'll talk about a particularly spooky reflective surface, the Conjuring Mirror. No relation to the actual Conjuring films though, so far anyway. This is one that has a truly terrifying story attached to it. The idea of mirrors as portals to other worlds is well documented, with different cultures around the world coming to similar conclusions about these shiny planes. People often see things they wish they hadn't in a mirror, which is especially true of the one at the Warren Occult Museum. It's said that if you look into it for long enough, you'll start to see conjured spirits. In fact, the mirror apparently does its best to conjure these spirits upon the user. The story goes that Ed and Lorraine came into possession of it after its previous owner stared into the mirror for weeks on end. For a while nothing happened, but eventually it conjured up a series of faces and figures so gruesome and horrifying the man lost his mind entirely. He was sent to a mental institution and the mirror was sent to the Warrens. Since then, people have looked into the mirror, but definitely not for weeks at a time. I wonder what would happen if someone replicated the experiment. Coming in at number 5, we've got a vampire coffin. Say what? The resting place of an undead bloodsucker? In this museum? Well, what happened to the previous tenant? Was it forceful eviction, or maybe a what we do in the shadows scenario where a vampire hunter snuck in through the basement and exposed an ancient vampire to sunlight? Regardless of how they came into possession of this burial box, the story probably isn't too pleasant. Still though, what a find. According to Ed and Lorraine, the coffin once belonged to a modern-day vampire, but they didn't really elaborate too much on the details. That kind of vagueness just makes me want to know more, you know? Unfortunately, that story may have died with the famous couple, but we can definitely consider a whole plethora of options. There are all sorts of implications that come along with someone claiming to possess a vampire's coffin. How modern are we talking here? Were there other vampires in this one's undead community? Are they trying to blend in with the rest of society at this point, or is it a John Carpenter's vampires scenario where they're looking for more blood than ever? There haven't been too many sightings of vampires lately, at least by my count, so one has to wonder what's been going on. Twilight is trending again, so there's gotta be some sort of vampiric element in the air. A couple more months till October and then we'll know for sure. I wonder if there's anything inside the Warren's coffin. I guess we can't really check at this point, but hey. If anyone has visited or seen someone open the coffin, would you be so kind as to drop the details down in the comments? I'd love to know if there are any rosaries, fangs, or vampire bones left behind. Maybe even some scorch marks that might suggest that the vampire did indeed get burned. Gosh, a modern vampire. I wonder if they like video games or watching sports on TV. Coming in number 4, we've got cursed photographs. Cue the Nickelback jokes. Look at this photograph. Every time I see it makes me suffer. Not as catchy, but you get the point anyway. While none are particularly legendary, you can definitely assume that any photographs at the museum have a creepy backstory. I'm actually kind of surprised more cursed photos aren't circulating these days. It seems like a lot of photographs with spirits and curses imbued within are from the age of the darkroom, or even before that. Do you think that tintype pictures were more likely to be cursed? I suppose there was the good old practice of death photos. Plus, plenty of folks got included in family photos, even post-mortem, because the experience of having your picture taken was so rare. Folks have a lot more opportunities to snap pics of their friends and family these days, so images of corpses made up to be more alive are probably less common, at least as far as I know. The internet is a deep and dark place, and I'm sure there are folks who would pay top dollar for something like that taken with a mirrorless DSLR. Oh boy. Back to the museum though, there are entire walls covered in creepy old photographs. It kind of feels like a haunted house attraction at a theme park sometimes, now doesn't it? We've got brides with their faces totally obscured, white dress and all. Are those flowers symbolic or something? I guess we can't really know. Images of sinister looking men in hunting garb adorn the walls as well, making folks wonder what their story might be. Sullen-faced children looking past the camera, images of demonic figures, questionably dark photographs of things difficult to make out the works. To look at these photos is one thing, but to have one in your home is something else entirely. Thankfully, they're at the museum and not for sale. However, there is the good old theory that photos of the photos might bring the effects of the curse wherever they're viewed. So like the shadow doll, you might be done for just by looking at these pictures of pictures. Maybe consider investing in some holy water or seeking out the advice of a paranormal expert. Good luck with all that. Coming in number 3, we've got demonic masks. Masks hold such rich meaning all across different cultures. The obscuring of one's face can cause so many things to happen, both good and bad. There's the classic idea that once a person puts on a mask, they will finally act as their true self. Others know that masks can protect folks from recognition, whether that means from other humans or paranormal entities that want to take something from you. On stage and in day-to-day performance, masks are associated with deception and hiding one's identity. So when they're used in dark rituals or other haunted rites, they may be inhabited by things other than people. Take a walk around the museum and you will find a treasure trove of creepy and disturbing face coverings. Uncanny Valley inhabitants of the highest order, these creations of rubber and paint can really be upsetting to look at for too long. Red-faced demons, dirty hags, strange screaming mouths, and more. A lot of them remind me of classics from Halloween 3 and Goosebumps, two mask-based experiences that shaped my childhood in ways we can't really get into today. Don't put any of them on, for nobody knows what might be dwelling within. Could be a nice spirit, or even better, nothing. Although there's always the risk of a malevolent demon waiting within, eagerly anticipating the moment an unsuspecting victim dons the mantle. Maybe stick to medical masks for now. No demons should be waiting in there, plus you'll keep all your droplets to yourself. Coming in at number 2, we've got the tombstones of children. Yes, you heard that correctly. The Warrens had a collection of grave markers meant to sit above children who passed on. Now, in their defense, apparently these had been collected after they exorcised some demons raised through satanic rituals. The tombstones were not originally moved by the Warrens, but by those who would perform these dark deeds. The Warrens simply took them to the museum after all was said and done, likely in an attempt to prevent others from using them in further rituals. Definitely a strange collection to have, all things considered. Is there something about a child's tombstone that makes it extra potent for ritual use? I wonder what the rationale is behind that, other than sounding extra taboo. And finally, at number 1, we've got a haunted brick. On its own, a brick doesn't seem so bad. It's just a bit of dried clay, that's all. But this brick is special. It was taken from Borley Rectory, also known as the most haunted building in England. This home, built for the rector of the Borley parish, had gained quite a bit of notoriety before burning down and being demolished. After it was built, many claimed that it was haunted by a number of spirits. These claims multiplied when a paranormal investigator published an account of his visit in the Daily Mirror. From there, many more folks decided to see what all the hype was. People claimed to see little Victorian boys roaming the grounds, only to disappear without a trace. Cars have been assailed by phantom thumps, and ghost lights shine brightly in their mirrors. But why would a building built for a rector be haunted from day one? Well, there's an ancient rumor that Borley Rectory was built upon the same grounds that the Benedictine monastery once stood. It was here that a monk and a nun partook in a forbidden relationship, eventually culminating in their untimely deaths. Since then, their presences have been felt all over the grounds, causing bells to ring without anyone around, recording equipment to malfunction, candlesticks to be thrown, and animals to be spooked. The rectory and the monastery are gone now, but the Warrens did procure a piece of the famously haunted place before it fell. One has to wonder how much haunted energy is still imbued in this brick. Would you be willing to pick it up? Coming in at number 5, we've got a mask of Hannah Crana. This item isn't necessarily intrinsically linked to the famous witch, but it is done up in her likeness and inspires folks to learn more about her magical ways, and that is impressive, so we'll talk about it. Way back when, in the far-off land of New England, there once lived a woman known as Hannah Crana. She was an individual with a particularly short temper and a tendency to demand things of her neighbors with nothing offered in return. Come on, Hannah. Now, oftentimes her neighbors would say no to these demands, resulting in a bit of a tantrum from Miss Crana. These could be scary and upsetting, but nothing too terrible, or so they thought. Often, after refusing Hannah Crana a favor, these neighbors would have some misfortune befall them, and because of the rumors circulating, they didn't usually chalk this up to simple bad luck. No sir, they suspected witchcraft. The idea compounded over time, especially as things seemed to get worse around Hannah. Her husband wandered off into the night and perished after falling off a cliff. This put even heavier suspicion upon Hannah, who at this point was deemed a witch by all of her neighbors. And Hannah Crana embraced this title with aplomb. Good for her, right? She took to walking around with her rooster, old Boreas, who many suspected to be her familiar. She cursed her baker neighbor to bake less tasty pies, and cursed a young fisherman to never catch a fish again. And eventually she foresaw her own death and made some more of her famous demands in relation to her burial. Her neighbors were told to carry her coffin to her grave by hand, not by cart. She also refused to be buried before sundown. Of course, when she kicked the bucket, they didn't want to deal with all this. But when they attempted to drag her coffin through the snow by sled, it would slide off and down the hill, forcing them to try again. And to top it all off, when they returned to Hannah Crana's home at the end of the ordeal, it had burned to the ground. A witch through and through. So be careful while looking at this mask. Who knows if somehow Hannah Crana could still be channeling power through it. Coming in number 4, we've got some satanic books. We've talked quite a bit about the allure and taboo that comes along with satanic rituals. When people find masks, dolls, tombstones, idols, and more associated with Satanism, they tend to get pretty freaked out. They tell tales about what these objects may have been used for in the past, and generally attribute a whole lot of dark energy to them. Whether anyone doing this understands exactly what they're talking about is totally up in the air. It seems that every few decades or so there's a brand new satanic panic. X is leading to Y and it's going to corrupt our children. Why won't we think of the children? However, if folks took the time to attempt to understand what they were really talking about, I would bet that the panic might recede a little bit. The frantic reactions of the ill-informed will never stop, will they? On the many shelves of the Warren Occult Museum sit volumes and volumes of satanic books. These could be read by those afraid of what rituals might be impacting people around them, or they could sit there and look scary. If you're afraid of something, it is likely that you just don't understand it. Demystifying ideas and people and creatures is often a good way to really get to the core of what makes them scary, and then you can see them for what they really are. People would probably claim that all these satanic books at the museum are haunted or cursed or have a history of being used in evil rituals, but would never themselves read one to find out exactly what the contents entail. Maybe that saves them from being haunted, but also it could cause them to live in ignorance longer, using fear as an excuse to make broad assumptions and statements. I know this isn't a fantastic analysis of the actual books found at the Warren Occult Museum, but I feel like when discussing things like this, it can be helpful to encourage curiosity over fear. Who knows? Maybe you'll learn something useful. Hopefully without having to resort to rituals and sacrifices. Coming in number 3, we've got some samurai armor. I'll be honest right off the bat here. This armor, as creepy and cool as it is, doesn't actually exist. Like, it's showcased briefly in the Conjuring cinematic universe, but we don't learn all that much about it. The reason for the lack of apparent backstory is simple. They made it up for the movie. Bit of a letdown, I know. But for it to have screen time, that must mean that there is a wicked tale to be told about this battle-hardened human protector. It may have belonged to a famously brutal warrior, one who took the heads of all his victims on the battlefield. Their poor, unfortunate souls doomed to reside within the carapace until the end of time. Maybe the bloodthirsty soul of the samurai himself still resides in the armor. Perhaps the suit has a different story altogether, free from battlefield use. What do you think the story is behind this fictional item? Coming in number 2, we've got some glass eyeballs. They see you. In general, old school prosthetics fall under the uncanny valley classification. The folks making them didn't have the technology or experience to make them truly comfortable or convincing, so we often ended up with weird facsimiles of human body parts that are quite unsettling to look at. To be honest, I think the pirates had it right. Forget fake parts, let's just use peg legs and eye patches. Of course, that's not exactly the most dignified way to live one's life, and not everyone wants to look like a pirate with a hook for a hand. So even before we had high quality prosthetics for general use, folks did their best to make replacement parts. And so we ended up with stuff like this. 2 foggy glass eyeballs inside of what appears to be an Altoids tin, ready to peer into your soul at a moment's notice. That's a grim image. And apparently, these eyeballs are haunted. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it must be blood-curdling. Maybe they float around at night, suspended in the air, implying a face that nobody can see. Or maybe a ghost without eyes pops them in from time to time, completing a face that went to the grave missing a couple of ocular grapes. No matter how you slice this, you've got a pair of roly-poly disembodied eyeballs that cannot and will not blink. Things they must have seen. And finally, at number 1, we've got a dark magic doll. Unsurprisingly, the Warrens had a massive collection of scary dolls. Annabelle and the Shadow Doll are just the beginning, and are likely so well known compared to the others thanks to their relative power. These two will act on their own and often cause mischief and misfortune without being prompted. The dark magic doll is a little different, where it's still imbued with a curse, but has to be used by a human to take effect. According to Tony Spera, son-in-law of the Warrens, it operates kind of like a voodoo doll. By adding an image of the person you're attempting to harm to it, you can use it to cause plenty of pain in their life. Make the doll look like your target, perform a quick ritual, and maybe add some of their hair to the equation and you're set. Then you hang the doll and wait for it to take effect. Apparently those who are targeted by the effects of this magic doll will soon fall ill and eventually succumb to this illness. So don't be messing around with it for no reason. You've got to go in with intent. And just for funsies, please let us know if that's something you plan on doing in the future. So we know. We're not worried or anything, no way. Coming at number 5, we've got the Satanic Idol. Now, Satan is usually quite a controversial figure. In the past, any mention of the name would have been associated with something terrible, especially as satanic panic swept the nation. Why won't anyone think of the children, right? We love to assign weird moral values to stuff to ensure our political weight can be thrown around, but I'm getting off topic. These days, the jury is out on Satan. Many folks love the guy and worship him as ardently as anyone else would worship their deities. Some say he's a more forgiving figure than plenty of other gods and demigods. However, this idol doesn't seem to be associated with that end of the satanic spectrum. This one comes from the bowels of hell and brings with it misfortune and terror, or so they say. Let's take a look at this interesting oddity. With a misshapen horned head, piercing blue eyes, and a strange, unnaturally slim body, this doesn't necessarily look like the powerful demon most folks would assume is Satan. Artists can take liberties with the things they create, so don't write it off simply based on its looks. Apparently, a young hunter had been scavenging through the woods in Connecticut when he stumbled upon this cursed idol. He didn't really know what to do with it, but he took it along just as well. Soon after coming into possession of this horned artifact, he ran into an old man in dark robes, one telling tales of doom and horror. This, of course, spooked the hunter, who discussed this interaction with his friends. Eventually, after some sleepless nights and anxiety, he was put in contact with the Warrens, who came by to evaluate the idol. They deemed it haunted indeed and took it off the poor guy's hands. I'm sure he was very glad to be free of it. Ed and Lorraine strapped the devil thing in and brought it back to their museum, where it still remains. So if you ever get a hankering for some devil worship or really want to look into some Gollum-esque blue eyes, you know where to go. Just be careful. That cloaked man in the woods is said to have been a worshipper of Satan, using the idol in dark and terrible rituals. I'm sure it's safe in the museum, but who knows? Coming in number 4, we've got the toy monkey. What is it about old school toys that makes them so creepy? Like, at some point in history, every single toy maker decided it was time to stop stop making them look that way and move on to much cuter, cuddlier, cooler, and overall less frightening things. Maybe tastes changed, or folks just collectively woke up to the fact that they were letting their kids play with nightmare objects, but regardless of the reason, I'm glad we've left these designs in the past. Dredging up these figures makes for some good spooky times though, right? Take this toy monkey for example. Would you buy your kids something like this these days? I'd wager no, and for good reason. Not only is it unsettling to look at, plenty of similar monkeys have been featured in the spookiest of scenes across Hollywood, but there's a lot of dark energy imbued in this particular monkey. The one at the Warrens Museum is said to carry a terrible curse. Hell, it was even featured in Annabelle Comes Home. So what does a little monkey have to do to earn such a reputation? Well, this one seems to stalk people, torment them, and then kill them. Oh no. Imagine this thing suddenly appearing in your life one day, then as time went on it started popping up in places you know you didn't leave it. Little monkey cymbals might be heard crashing in the middle of the night, and disembodied shuffling can keep you from sleeping. All that's creepy, but it's still just a toy, right? Hold up. Did its eyes just glow? That is some monkey business I want no part of. But hey, at least this one in particular is locked away and not to be recirculated into the general population of antique monkey toys. Well, for now anyway. Coming in number 3, we've got the Shadow Doll. Now, we've all got a particular cursed doll in mind when it comes to the Warrens, and now she's the star of a major motion picture franchise, so it seems that she's always gonna come in first. But there is another doll at the museum that should elicit at least the same amount of fear. That's right, I'm talking about the Shadow Doll. This thing is downright butt ugly. Like, Annabelle as an OG Raggedy Annie is kinda creepy, and they had to make sure they punched up the creepiness with some porcelain features and unnerving eyes for the movie. But if they made a movie featuring the Shadow Doll as is, I think they might actually have to make it less creepy. For real. I don't know if big movie theater chains would allow something like this on their screens. Feels like something out of a snuff film, maybe a low-budget exploitation flick. Nobody's looking at this and saying, oh yeah, I want to watch a whole movie based on this thing. Worse yet, the Shadow Doll seems to carry a much more terrible curse than most. Plenty of cursed dolls require you to be in the same room as them in order for the worst of the effects to hit you, but the Shadow Doll just needs you to view a picture of it to generate risk. Just looking at it means there's a chance it'll visit you in your dreams and kill you there, Freddy Krueger style. And based on looks, I don't think it would make it fun like Freddy does. It would just be brutal and upsetting. Goodness gracious. Coming in number 2, we've got the Pearls of Death. These are known for their outrageously dangerous powers. They might just look like a nice set of pearls waiting to be adorned by the fanciest of folk, but be warned, the glamour is not worth the price. And I'm not talking about how much you pay for them. No, it is not money that these pearls want, it is your life. Owners of this particular string of aquatic orbs have complained time and time again of the necklace constricting around their throat and choking them. According to the first woman to adorn herself with this luxurious item, she felt as if she was being strangled as soon as she put them on. She attempted to take them off, but was unsuccessful. Panicked, she rushed out to request help, and it took multiple people yanking on the string to finally set her free. Since then, people have been very reluctant to wear these pearls. Some believe that a Satanist or black magic worshipper cursed the necklace before it was given to the unfortunate woman, kind of like the opposite of a holy person blessing an object. How fun. I wonder if we got a priest in there, whether they could cancel out the curse. I suppose not too many people are willing to test whether or not the pearls are still strangling. And finally, at number 1, we've got Annabelle, the Warren Museum tenant who needs no introduction, the mistress of the glass case, the shadow clawer of college boyfriends, the mega million movie star herself, Annabelle. What a classic cursed doll. Honestly, I'm sure the museum could liquidate most of their other objects and still have a similar crowd come by if they just kept Annabelle. Legendary. She looks a little different in real life than in the movies, although I'm sure this is true of any movie star. We've already discussed her Raggedy Annie appearance, especially compared to the more porcelain figure in the flicks. However, this doll makes up for a lack of spooky looks with a plethora of terrifying tales. After being gifted to a nursing student, Annabelle started acting strange. She'd move around the house on her own and leave little notes to the girls living there. Eventually, she would attack and strangle the boyfriend of one of the students, leaving them desperate for help. The Warrens soon arrived and whisked the doll away. However, they seemed to know just how wretched and terrible she could be, and as such, they locked Annabelle away in a holy box.
Number 5. Satanic Worship Idol. Before we dive into the strange footage of the Satanic Idol, let's talk about its odd and terrifying backstory. The story of the idol begins in 1991, near Ed and Lorraine's home. There was a lost deer hunter wandering through the area, and after hours of finding no discernible landmarks or ways home, he came face to face with an odd and captivating discovery. In front of him was a large, raised rock formation, consisting of circular rocks and a strange being standing in the center of the altar? The hunter, as I believe most of us would be, felt quite uncomfortable and uneasy about this discovery. So he began making his way back to his car, but on his way, he turned to his side and noticed an elderly man with dark eyes dressed in a fully black suit walking in perfect step with him. The two hadn't shared a word, and the hunter became more anxious with each hollow step he took, still not sure of the way out of the woods. The hunter cautiously turned over to the strange man, and with a deep breath he asked, "How do I get out of here?" The strange man lifted up a frail hand and pointed towards a small overgrown path. The hunter turned to see a small pathway and then turned back to the man to thank him, but upon glancing, the man was nowhere to be seen. He disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. The hunter escaped the forest, but was so perplexed and intrigued by the strange encounter that he decided to contact none other than Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, here's where a new, hardly known fact is revealed. Ed and Lorraine almost always investigated reports armed with a camera to capture any footage that they may have missed and for review. Ed and the hunter located the altar, and in a moment of what can only be described as white audacity, Ed removed the demonic doll from the altar and brought it back to the museum. In the footage, the strange elderly man can be seen lurking in strange corners of the screen, materializing in random positions throughout the footage. The video recording also cuts out frequently, and strange humming noise can be heard along with the glitches. Ed and Lorraine kept the footage under wraps due to the effects that the doll had on Lorraine. And if you'd like to find out more about that reasoning, check out our video on cursed artwork in the Warren Occult Museum. Number 4. Snedeker House. The Warrens are famous for their home investigations of the Perrin family, the Conjuring movie inspiration, and the Amityville home. But there's a less known, very well documented case that the pair also investigated, the Snedeker House. Carmen and Al Snedeker rented a home in Southington, Connecticut, but upon exploring the house, they encountered something that would have scared me out of there faster than light. The pair discovered mortuary tools in their basement, tools that were used in the closed morgue that was in the basement of this house. The home was a funeral parlor. The only time living in a funeral home is acceptable is in My Girl. The couple began smelling rotten flesh, strong chemical odors throughout the house, and the water from the taps would randomly turn a deep red. Their sons were plagued by visions of ghosts and other strange entities. The ghosts became aggressive towards the family, and that's when they decided to call the Warrens for assistance, scared for their lives. The Warrens showed up, filming. They documented several apparitions. Lorraine reported feeling several supernatural entities, all who were filled with vengeance and bouts of pain. The Warrens deduced, within the same visit, that they believed the morticians would participate in horrendous, actually unspeakable acts with the deceased bodies brought into the home. Ed and Lorraine ended their investigation very quickly. In the tape, it's reported that the Snedekers repeatedly asked for sound advice on how to deal with their issue, but sadly, no footage beyond their questioning has been released. The Warrens' advice to the family remains a complete mystery. What do you think their advice would have been? Number 3. The Black Lace Veil. Right in the middle, we're going to talk about an event that had many eyewitnesses and was likely captured in some degree by recording equipment. Following one of their public lectures, Ed and Lorraine Warren were approached by a young couple, Alan and Lonnie. Alan had brought Lonnie to the lecture because he suspected that she was under the influence of the occult. He described a disturbance. When Lonnie became angry, her features would morph and transform into a creature resembling a wolf, and an entirely different voice would emerge from her. Just as Lorraine joined the conversation, a shocking incident unfolded. Lonnie experienced an instantaneous possession and lunged aggressively at Lorraine, utterly terrifying everyone present in the room. Ed swiftly escorted the couple to a backstage room where Lonnie was fully under possession, her face distorted into the aforementioned wolf-like appearance. After about 10 minutes, the possession subsided, and Lonnie revealed her disturbing experiences of memory loss and losing time over the past few months, which, as you know, are all very common symptoms of possession. Lonnie confessed that she had resorted to witchcraft after failing to win Alan's affections. She performed a ritual that involved a black lace veil and a crown of goat horns, renouncing her faith and swearing allegiance to Satan. In a month, Alan began showing interest, but the demonic entity had gained entrance into her life. Ed knew that Lonnie needed an exorcism and contacted a priest who arrived the same day. During the exorcism, the entity within Lonnie screamed in protest, but was eventually separated from her, vowing to return to another. The Warrens took the black lace veil, goat horns, cup, and conjuring book for safekeeping to prevent repossession. However, the story of the veil didn't end there. Months later, during a meeting with another woman who manifested multiple personalities and inhuman entities, her gaze landed on the black veil. She clutched it, her features transformed, and she became an inhuman spirit. Ed, armed with blessed water, banished the demon a second and final time. Both of these events are said to have been captured on a tape recorder, as the Warrens frequently recorded their lectures. Number 2. The Haunted Pearl Necklace. The Haunted Pearl Necklace is also referred to as the Pearls of Death. This jewelry's effects are pretty obvious. The necklace is known as one of the most dangerous items within the Warrens Occult Museum, so yeah, it's living up to its name already. The Pearls of Death is a cursed necklace that has a curse or entity residing in it, causing anyone who wears it to be strangled, and in some cases even strangled so brutally that their lives are ended. Yeah. Death by a necklace. I'm starting to rethink my stance on that gorgeous blue diamond necklace. If you know, you know. It's an inside joke. Only my faves know what I'm talking about. One of their former owners commonly reported being choked while wearing them, even waking up with red marks on her neck after sleeping in them. The pearls are also extremely difficult to remove. Well, they're difficult to remove from the living. Ed and Lorraine Warren kept these pearls heavily guarded and surveyed, and if you're like me, the word surveyed raises excited alarm bells. That's right. Within the museum, several security cameras are placed, which not only protect the artifacts, but also monitor any strange activity. In one surveillance clip, which was privately distributed by an anonymous source who had regular access to the museum, revealed a myriad of strange activities surrounding the pearls. The video captures the pearls vibrating ever so slightly before a small light emanates from them, and a dark shadow quickly shifts towards the ground, as though it was water flowing out of the pearls. These events repeated night after night, typically around 4:24 a.m., with the effects being weaker the further away they get from the stated time. Whether Ed and Lorraine were aware of the footage being leaked to a select group of people, they never addressed it. They didn't even deny it. I suppose they figured ignoring the footage completely would decrease the interest in it, and hey, they were right. I'd never heard of it until now. Number 1. White Lady of Union Cemetery. You guys know how I feel about the naming. Come on, be more creative. The White Lady? Guys, just please try a little bit harder. Anyway, the White Lady is the name of the ghost that haunts the Union Cemetery in Connecticut. The legend surrounding her origin varies, but there are several points that consistently align to create an accurate backstory. She's thought to be the ghost of Harriet Seeley, who searches for her deceased son throughout the graveyard. It is also widely agreed that she wears a bright orange dress. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, she wears a white dress, and you bet your bottom dollar it's a flowy one. The ghost was often seen by locals. She frequently spooked the citizens of the surrounding area, jumping in front of cars, appearing in their periphery, and then disappearing. Ed Warren was heavily interested in this apparition, so he set out on a quest to record this ghost for himself. Yes, for himself. As I said, they don't enjoy sharing their findings. Maybe the ghosts value privacy and Ed signed an NDA or something, I don't know. But the NDA didn't apply to the pair's son-in-law, Tony Spera, because shortly after their passing, he released the full footage. The footage begins by panning over a darkened cemetery, and there's definitely a heavy air surrounding the entirety of the footage. While panning over the rows of graves, a glowing human figure wearing a long white dress was spotted moving behind a tombstone, like it was playing hide and go seek. No close-up shots of the spirit were caught, and the camera wasn't very good, so any distinct details that the ghost may have remain a mystery. The video was reviewed by skeptics, and it was actually widely agreed that the footage was not doctored in any way. But not only that, the figure seen was not just an illusion or a filming trick. The being is in fact there. Ed Warren did manage to capture evidence of a ghost on camera, which is pretty amazing. Even though I'm not obsessed with him as a person, his career and accomplishments are right up my alley.
Upon entering the Warrens Museum, one of the first things you'll see is this frightening little shadow doll, made of bird feathers and real human teeth. The Warrens' son-in-law and current proprietor of the museum, Tony Spera, offers a bit of insight on the doll, saying it was originally acquired at an antique shop, where it was being sold, and the owners of the shop, being none the wiser of the doll's evil, had it for sale. That's totally on the antique shop owners though. You come into possession of a doll made of bird feathers and human teeth, your first instinct should be to bury it with some rosaries, not stick a price tag on it, but I digress. The doll's curse works by taking a photograph of the doll, and when it develops, writing the curse you'd like to inflict and sending it to your victim. The person who then opens the envelope and sees the doll in the photograph will invite the curse into your home. The real question I have about the shadow doll is, do you think it is jealous that it's not the most famous haunted doll in the Warrens' collection? I know I'd probably have a hard time sitting next to Annabelle all day while everyone comes to gawk at my movie star sister. No wonder the doll is cursing people. If you're having fun, drop a subscribe and catch new scary videos every single day. Number 4. The brick from Borley Rectory. A brick? Okay, you're running out of ideas and it's only number 4. Well, bear with me, okay? It's not just the brick, it's the story behind the brick. And besides, a brick is actually pretty scary on its own. It doesn't even need to be haunted. Just imagine it being thrown into a window. Bam, very scary. Anyway, this particular cursed brick comes to us from Borley Rectory, one of the most haunted houses in the United Kingdom, and I gotta say, possibly one of the worst named buildings in the country. Borley Rectory sounds like a horrible medical infection. Borley Rectory could be its own video based on all the alleged hauntings and stories that have taken place in its hallowed walls. Since the 18th century, it's been home to all sorts of reported hauntings. It checks off all the usual requirements for a haunted domicile. To name a few: unexplained footsteps, ghostly apparitions, bells ringing without reason, whispers of a headless monk that would wander the halls, horse-drawn carriages being commandeered by a headless horseman, seeing shadows, and one ghastly nun who just maybe served as the inspiration for the nun from the film The Nun. There is a lot going on at this haunted building. So, naturally, it's a great spot for two famed demonologists, and sometime in the 1970s, Ed and Lorraine Warren ventured out to the UK to investigate the Borley Rectory and see if maybe they could put a plug in some of this. Upon entering, Lorraine declared almost immediately that she could feel the presence of a nun's spirit. So the pair took some photographs, and after developing the photographs, lo and behold was the ghostly apparition of a nun in the corner. Now obviously the story of the film is much different, and in the film The Nun, the Warrens only really appear for a Thanos-style cameo at the end, but you never know, this could very well have been the inspiration for that character. The brick serves as a souvenir and a reminder of one more haunting in their storied logbook. Number 3, the Satanic Idol and the human skull. No way. No way a satanic idol and a human skull are haunted. No way. The skull was given to the Warrens, apparently as a gift, and I sincerely hope they kept the gift receipts for that one, because it's not the kind of thing I'd like, but they probably loved it. Now, the Satanic Idol is a slightly different story. The tall, slender, bizarre idol doesn't immediately scream Satan or satanic, but all you need to do is take a single look at it to be unnerved. It's definitely not the kind of thing you'd ever want to be face to face with, or I don't know, see in a scary clearing in the woods. And yet for one lonesome hunter, that's exactly what happened. Apparently, the idol and the skull with it were taken from the woods nearby the Warren estate by a local hunter who had found them both. The hunter claims that he was approached by a man in mysterious black garb who ushered him away. Obviously, a little shaken and stirred by such a bizarre experience, went to the only people he thought he could trust with something like this, and he took the idol to the Warrens for safekeeping. Now, after he brought it to them, Lorraine Warren fell deeply ill almost immediately after bringing the idol into their home, with no one able to correctly diagnose what was happening to her. Ed believed that his family was being targeted for welcoming the idol into their home. You'd think that a pair of storied demonologists like this would have seen this coming, but you know, we all make mistakes. Lorraine recovered, obviously, and although no details emerged on how she did or what they did to purify and cleanse the idol, we can assume most likely it was probably blessed, exorcised, and doused in holy water of some kind. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fit to sit amongst their treasures. It now rests inside the museum, alongside all their other haunted relics, patiently waiting for Hollywood, where I've heard it's very open to hearing offers for a 3-picture deal and some spin-offs if that's on the table. Number 2, the organ. Now, one of the more mysterious items inside the museum is this big grand organ. Get your mind out of the gutter. It's a musical instrument, like a church organ. The church organ was recovered after authorities seized a haunted house in Connecticut. Having close ties to the Warrens, the authorities asked if there was anything they might like to retrieve from the site. The house, burned down mysteriously not even days after the organ was removed. Ed Warren, lover of all things haunted and a good bargain, had a great interest in this organ, and keeping of his self-imposed duty of controlling haunted objects, took it upon himself to take it home. Obviously this thing was cursed, obviously. Ed Warren would say that he would hear songs being played from it discordantly throughout his home whenever no one was around. And when Ed would venture forth into his office to investigate it, the music would stop as soon as he opened the door. He says this would occur every time he tried to investigate it, happening 3 different times. Eventually, losing sleep over one more haunted relic, Ed Warren contacted a friend at the clergy to come bless it. He would have a priest come by every 2 weeks or so to bless his home and to bless every item in the museum to keep the spirits docile. It begs the question, with this much effort, why even keep cursed items in your home? The organ at least seems benevolent, but Annabelle, the skulls, the satanic idols, why them? Well, Ed and Lorraine believed by keeping these items under supervision, it meant they were safe from outside interference and no one else would be put at risk. The pair feared that if any of the cursed objects were destroyed or damaged, then they could release the spirits back into the world, free to cause more mayhem. This same reason is why, despite the passing of the Warrens, the museum is still kept up and open and maintained. And also so, paranormal ghouls and goblins like us can go check out all this spooky stuff and get some fantastic Instagram stories out of it. Number 1. The Conjuring Mirror. Hey, wait a second, there wasn't a particularly notable mirror in The Conjuring, are you trying to fool me? It was a haunted music box. Well, you're totally right, it was a haunted music box. This is a different thing, unrelated to The Conjuring, but related to The Conjuring in the sense that it was owned by Ed and Lorraine. Give it enough time, this might be in one of the movies. Over the years, you've probably heard all sorts of superstitions regarding mirrors. I mean, I'm sure you've heard that breaking one is 7 years of bad luck. But there are some who say that mirrors can be used as portals to other worlds, and can be used as the stage for all manner of ritual. It's even been said this is how Nostradamus was able to peer so deep into the future. This desire caught the attention of one Stephen Zellner, a Connecticut native who wanted to try a little soothsaying of his own. He acquired the mirror and performed a ritual on the art of kleptomancy, dangling the mirror from a thread into a pool of water, where supposedly, if performed correctly, you'll be able to see visions in the reflections below. Well, as the story goes, for Zellner, it worked, and he saw brief glimpses of his future, but didn't see the spirits that had been kept inside the mirror which he invited into his home, wreaking all manner of havoc on him. Doors would slam shut, drawers would fly open, objects would be hurled across the room, the poltergeist classics. Knowing that he'd invited something dark that he couldn't handle into his home, he reached out to the church for an exorcism and was referred to Ed and Lorraine. The pair exorcised the spirits back into the mirror, sealing them back. Knowing that it wasn't safe to leave the mirror in the hands of Zellner, the two offered to take it off of his hands, protecting and controlling the evil inside and adding it to their collection of delightful cursed relics where it now resides.